Chapter 899. What about now? The chaotic space gave everyone a feeling of unease. It was too dull here. There were only various kinds of chaotic gases that were just born to mend the big hole in the void. Zero saw that everyone was a little restless. He jumped up and looked at Chaos. Is that guy dead? No, he has fainted. I have dispelled his berserk state. The element of chaos has been suppressed back into the fragments. He is fine now. He is still floating in the chaotic space. The space attribute has not been fixed yet. The space here is overlapping, and it is easy to fall into the dislocated space. However, I am guiding him out. You will see him in a while. Chaos crossed his arms and looked at a certain space. I will go back first. I am a little tired from fighting. Chaos let out a long sigh and rubbed his arms. Everyone was stunned. When they turned their heads, they saw that the black gas that permeated his body was retreating like a receding tide. His long black hair transformed into a colorful color. The violent and uneasy aura also disappeared completely in a few breaths. It was all retracted back into Yun Nuoxing's body. Everyone looked at each other and waited quietly for a few minutes. A few minutes later, Yun Nuoxing opened his eyes. When they saw that familiar colorful color occupying his eyes, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. That guy is back. Yun Nuoxing blinked and suddenly grinned. He stretched out his hand and rubbed his shoulder. That bastard really did not hold back. He tortured my body until it was almost broken. How could my small body withstand his strength? Little Moon rushed over and grabbed his long hair with her jade-like hand. She grabbed his arm and looked at it. After a while, she took half a step back and looked at him suspiciously. Brother, are you okay? No. My whole body is in pain. It doesn't seem like I am okay. Yun Nuoxing felt for a moment and then shook his head seriously. It's fine. Idiot number 1 is a cockroach. This kind of small matter won't be able to kill him. In the past, he always ended up lying on the ground. The fact that he's still standing means that he's doing well. Zero waved his hand, and everyone nodded in agreement. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Don't make it sound like I like to play with my life. Who would like to torture themselves to death for no reason? It's not that I have no choice but to, everyone said. All right, you're just addicted to playing with your life. There's no point in saying anything more. We won't accept your excuses. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Havana and the others looked at the chaotic zone and couldn't help but sigh. Seeing that they were done talking, Havana said, The void here will take some time to repair itself, but before the eruption, we had already thrown those worlds into a mess. In an emergency situation, we don't even know where they were thrown to. Do you need help? Yun Nuoxing asked with a dry smile. Oh, that won't be necessary. Let us clean up the mess here. Havana chuckled and shook his head. He pointed forward and said, You guys have more important things to do. Yun Nuoxing and Zero's expression turned serious as they nodded and turned their gazes towards the direction that Havana was pointing at. In the chaotic zone, the gas was suddenly pushed far away. In the unstable space, a person appeared out of nowhere. More than a dozen golden light rays circled around his body, revolving around him non-stop. That person was the void being. At this moment, his hands were hanging down and clasped together in front of him. In between his hands was a golden planet, which was also the last fragment that they had been searching for with all their might. We really traveled thousands of miles. Few, crossing the primordial realm to come to such a far place. Heaven and earth. Finally. Zero sighed 3 times. Anyone could hear the tiredness in his voice. He was the life of time, the embodiment of time. Even so, time would feel tired. It was just that he couldn't stop. Yuan Shi and the others looked at each other and sighed. Lin Xing couldn't help but say, Such a wonderful journey has finally come to an end. Ming walked lightly to Yun Nuoxing's side. She hugged him with her white wings and said softly, Brother, go. Yun Nuoxing nodded and looked at Zero. Both of them stepped out of the rule domain and opened it. their figures flashed and arrived in front of the void being. They couldn't help but size him up. This could be considered their first real meeting. When they were fighting just now, they didn't have much time to size up this powerful enemy. At this moment, the chaotic elements on this void being's body were completely still. Not a single bit was left. All of them had returned to the fragment. At this moment, this void being was the purest. Yun Nuoshing and the others felt a vast power from his body. It was as if they were facing a void. Speaking of which, the void being was the symbol of the void. Moreover, it was the void of the 8 elements realm, which gave them a faint sense of familiarity. Yun Nuoshing stretched out her hand and easily passed through the dozens of golden light rays. When she touched the golden planet, the fusion of the 8 fragments suppressed in the soul couldn't help but tremble. Perhaps it was because the last fragment was about to return? After taking the last fragment from the young man, Yun Nuoshing heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a white light burst out from the fragment. It was extremely sudden and fast, which shocked the two of them. However, they didn't feel any danger. Naturally, they didn't take any measures and allowed the white light to engulf the two of them. When they opened their eyes, they saw a brilliant galaxy. This was the memory contained in the fragment. Yun Nuoshing and Zero didn't find it strange. In their line of sight, more than a dozen black planets were chaotically arranged in this star field. The black suns shone with a black light that made people feel uneasy. This star field had a strong ominous energy flowing through it. The two of them were no strangers to this energy. Elements of primal chaos. This was a star system occupied by elements of primal chaos. In this star field, the chaotic and violent energy was everywhere. This energy had collapsed this star field and disrupted time and space. This was a space that was about to be destroyed. When the elements of primal chaos accumulated to a certain extent, this place would collapse on its own. This was the memory of the fragment, but it was very real. It was so real that Zero could feel the aura of this star field and the aura of the elements of primal chaos. It was a little different. There was something different. This is the primal chaos? What? Hearing Zero's astonished voice, Yun Nuoshing turned her head and saw Zero widening her eyes in astonishment. Zero pondered for a while and said, "Just like the natural elemental powers, fire, forest, and earth, the corresponding fire elemental, wood elemental, and earth elemental powers can be born in the world without being tainted by any other aura. They are the original elements, born from the world itself. Then, what about the ice element? Do you think the ice element will be born between heaven and earth?" Zero asked in a strange tone. "What are you talking about? Isn't the ice in the north and south ice realms?" Yun Nuoshing rolled her eyes. Before she finished speaking, she paused. "That's the water element, not the ice element. It doesn't mean that the form of ice is the ice element. In fact, whether it's an iceberg or a glacier, they all contain the water element," Zero said softly. Yun Nuoshing scratched her head. "That's it. The primal elements will be born between heaven and earth, but the primal, mutated elements will not be born," Zero said again. This time, Yun Nuoshing understood. She was stunned for a moment. She blinked and pointed at the planet in the distance. "Then you said that this is the primal chaos. The primal chaos is a special product born from the extreme mutation of the dark element. Isn't that nonsense?" "Yes, it's nonsense. It's very much nonsense. I can't explain it now. The only thing I can be sure of is that Father had been to this place in the past and saw some primal chaos. This is an indisputable fact." Zero frowned and nodded. Seeing Zero's troubled look, Yun Nuoshing reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't think about it. If you can't figure it out, don't think about it. No matter what, it's an indisputable fact that there is a large area of primal chaos here. Since it's a fact, it's useless to think too much about it. Anyway, if you can't figure it out, it's fine as long as you know it exists." Zero smiled bitterly. "Sometimes, I envy your simple-minded way of thinking. Of course, the memory fragment was not just for them to see the primal chaos. After pausing for 1 or 2 minutes, Yun Nuoshing and Zero saw that the dozens of planets that were disorderly suddenly trembled violently. Beams of black light penetrated the entire planet. The Earth cracked and black halos exploded from the planet. And at the center of the planets, a figure with black hair and black robes suddenly appeared. It was Quarter Moon. After Quarter Moon appeared, he was holding something in his hand. With a slight movement, the black beams of light that were rushing up to the stars suddenly changed direction, and all of them were pointed at him. His aura completely burst out in just a few breaths. It was so powerful that it was enough to shatter the entire sky. In fact, after he fully released his power, the stars of this world were also shaking. The light of thousands of stars dimmed, as if they were about to be extinguished. The black beams of light focused for a minute. Then, they gradually dimmed and finally disappeared completely. As the beams of light disappeared, the dozens of planets suddenly fell apart as if they were disintegrating on their own. They broke apart and revealed their black cores. However, those cores were also dim. Their energy had been used up along with the output of the beams of light. Boom! A violent roar exploded in the starry sky, and a gigantic black pillar of light that was billions of miles long shot up into the sky. It penetrated the world barrier and surged into the void. At the same time, a wave spread across the entire void at an infinite speed. Even the worlds far away from here suddenly felt this wave. All the life in this world, in this primordial realm, felt this wave. It was like a divine oracle. Yun Nuoshing was stunned for a moment. She was mesmerized by the brilliant beam of light. But when she felt the wave, she was still stunned. What's wrong? What's wrong? What was that just now? The Sky God's declaration. It announces to the entire void that a Sky God has descended. It announces to everyone that he was born. Zero took a deep breath and said, "So? Father became a Sky God here. This is the 5 elements realm, where Nainar is. This place once gave birth to primal chaos. No wonder the fragment came here. History is repeating itself?" Yun Nuoshing thought of something and blurted out. "Perhaps. Nainar, to be more precise, the 5 elemental realms, the upper plane, this world, this coordinate was where Father became a heavenly god more than 70 years ago. The scene of the past. After a few eras, the lower realm has been reborn many times. That world has long been lost. It's just that Nainar happened to come across this coordinate, the fragment," Zero said faintly. "Isn't that an unexpected disaster?" Yun Nuoshing laughed bitterly. "Originally, the people in Nainar were living well. They didn't seek death or cause any major disasters. But because of this coincidence, they were invaded by the elements of primal chaos and chased by the void beast. From then on, their peaceful lives were gone forever. They lived in such chaos every day. If it weren't for the Ling clan, they would have been wiped out long ago. Perhaps the elements of primal chaos surged in because they couldn't replay the scene of the past. Even if primal chaos exists, it can't appear all the time. Although this kind of replay is a little strange." Zero scratched its head. "Father definitely didn't have it as easy as we did when he became a Sky God. He must have experienced many battles here. The scale of the battle must have been even greater. He destroyed more than 10 planets. How could it not be great?" Yun Nuoshing rolled its eyes and said, "But we sank the void. Wouldn't it be even greater?" This. Zero laughed dryly. Suddenly, its expression became serious. "No, now is not the time to compare who can cause more trouble. The replay of the memory is over. Let's go out." Yun Nuoshing looked at the huge pillar of light that was gradually dissipating above them, and nodded. With a thought, he left with Zero. When he opened his eyes again, Yun Nuoshing lowered his head. The golden planet in his hand was gone. In its place was a transparent white ball. He was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly looked at his soul. The planet was gone too. It seemed that the 9 fragments had spontaneously fused together. The Gemini divine contract reacted spontaneously. Is it reminding us that we should leave? After they came out, Zero said this. Yun Nuoshing was stunned again. He pressed his hand to his chest. He also felt that something had spontaneously activated and formed a resonance between the two of them. We're leaving just like that? So, after causing a ruckus in someone else's territory, we're going to leave just like that? Yun Nuoshing laughed bitterly. It seemed that he could not do such a shameful thing. In any case, he had to deal with the aftermath or something. Havana and the others are from the divine race of the 5 elements realm. They're much more experienced than you, an outsider. Although it's not very kind to say this, it's better to leave these matters to them. We still have things to do. Zero paused for a moment and suddenly joked. And you haven't forgotten, right? You're still in the middle of a trip to the Arcana realm. OF*CK. I've really forgotten all about this. Yun Nuoshing sucked in a breath of cold air and slapped his head. The things that he had been busy with recently were a little strange, and a little fantastical. It made him forget that they were actually supposed to be in the Arcana realm. Instead, they inexplicably ran to the 5 elements realm to cause a ruckus. Then what about him? Yun Nuoshing thought of something and pointed at the void life form. At this time, after the golden planet left, the golden lines on the young man's body also disappeared. He was still floating in an unconscious state. Zero pondered for a moment and said, "Bring him back. He's an incarnation of the void life form of the 8 elements realm. Bring him back to the 8 elements realm. This guy is also innocent. He was sleeping well in the void and was brought here by the fragment. Speaking of which, is he necessary to reenact history?" Yun Nuoshing scratched his head. Fu Qing, Gu Shi, and a group of demons were sealed in the fragment. When they left the land of sealed skies, they took them along with a void lifeform in the void. Only then did they pass through the barrier of the primordial realm and come to the 5 elements realm. Zero smiled bitterly and shook his head. Who knows? The two of them tidied up. The transparent ball in their hands was shining brightly, as if it wanted to tell them something. However, now was not the time. They could only put it in their pockets and return to the 8 elements realm first. Zero dragged the young man and returned to the group with Yun Nuoshing. The latter looked at Havana and said, "Havana, we're going back." Havana was stunned for a moment. After a moment, he understood something and nodded. "We're going back to the 8 elements realm, right? I feel bad. We should have stayed to help with the aftermath, but for some reason, they suddenly told us that we should leave." Yun Nuoshing said with a dry smile. "It's nothing. The collapse of the void this time did not affect the children of the other world. As for the void, let it slowly recover. You have your own matters to attend to. Well, it's something we don't know much about anyway. You don't have to say anything. We won't understand even if you tell us." Havana simply spread his hands. "Let us send you off. Of course, we'll see you off." Ivan chuckled and patted Yun Nuoshing's shoulder. The two of them rolled their eyes. Zero threw the void creature to Yuan Shi and said with a smirk, "That's a god. Hold on tight." Yuan Shi shuddered and hurriedly grabbed hold of the young man. Her handsome face had an incomparably resolute expression. She took a deep breath and looked as if she was ready to face death. It was as if the person she wanted him to carry was not a human, but an extremely dangerous object. Yun Nuoshing and Zero looked at each other. The two of them made a hand sign at the same time. Like a mirror, they made the same gesture. A loud shout spread throughout the chaotic land. The twin divine pact. Without much effort and without any special situation, the two of them once again returned to their pure logical thinking mode. But this time it was slightly different. Before Ming could say anything, the two of them tore open the gate to the 8 elements realm. The journey to the 5 elements realm is over. The waiting time is too long. The void is destroyed. The divinity in the people of the divine realm is too strong. It will easily affect the recovery of the void. Those who are not high-ranking gods will have unstable divinity that will disturb the stability of the void. It's not advisable to stay in the lower realm for too long, we should leave. It was still the same ethereal voice that came from the two of them. It made everyone's cheeks twitch. Let's go, let's go. I'm so tired all this time. Chu Yingzhan casually waved her hand. She didn't care about everyone's expressions as she plunged into the purple and blue spatial door. She even left behind a sentence. If you want to play sad farewells, don't drag this fairy into it. Everyone laughed bitterly. This girl. The two bosses in charge can't respond to you now. Yuan Shi laughed bitterly. Before he could finish, Nightmare swung his arm and sent him flying. He rushed in front of Havana, grabbed his hand, and shook it. Hey, we'll get out of here first. As for the future, if we become gods one day, maybe we'll group up and come down to visit you. Havana was also stunned for a moment. Then, he nodded with a smile and waved his hand. Be careful. Ivan and the others looked at the blue and purple dimensional gate with great interest. He sniffled and said, Is that the 8 Elements realm? I feel that the rules are completely different from here. Cough, the world over there is not suitable for you. Well, let's not talk too much. We'll leave now. If fate hasn't ended, we'll meet again in the future. Yuan Shi patted Ivan's shoulder and smiled. As for Ming and the other girls, they had already plunged into the dimensional gate and left. The large group of people left in the blink of an eye. Yuan Shi was the last to leave. He turned around and looked at the people from the spiritual realm. He nodded and said, Goodbye. Take care. Havana nodded solemnly. Yuan Shi sighed and carried the void being into the gate of the primordial realm. Yun Nuoxing and Zero also walked towards the gate of the primordial realm and disappeared. In the chaotic zone, only Havana and the other gods from the spiritual realm were left. Ivan and the others sighed emotionally. Well, they're a bunch of weird guys from the beginning. Havana also smiled and nodded. Really, it's very magical. But it seems that we'll be busy for a while. Repairing the void. If possible, it's not a bad thing to study a higher-level void. After all, life is long. Children, do your best. I'll go look elsewhere. Havana left behind a sentence and instantly disappeared. The 5 great spiritual gods and the others all smiled bitterly. Their lord had slipped away again. Chapter 900. Under the reddish-black sky, there was a thin layer of clouds and mist that filled every corner of this world. It was like a dense fairy aura. Strange and unusual scenes were happening in the corners of this huge world. This state lasted for a very long time, from ancient times to the present, and it had been like this since time immemorial. All of a sudden, a blue and purple spatial gate that was about 30 meters in size appeared on the ground, dispersing some of the immortal chi. Their vision began to clear up, and the fog in the entire area dissipated as if it had gone into hiding. Not long after the space gate appeared, a figure suddenly rushed out from it. That person looked around and suddenly took a deep breath of fresh air. His voice was filled with unconcealable joy. The world of the 8 Elements realm. Abundant energy. I love this place to death. While he was sighing, the space gate behind him continuously fluctuated. Then, one figure after another came out and stood on this land. They looked around, then took a deep breath and said in unison, The world of the 8 Elements realm. Is it that exaggerated? The space gate finally fluctuated. 2 people walked out from it and the space gate closed. When the 2 people saw the group of people stretching and twitching, they could not help but roll their eyes. You've only stayed in the 5 Elements realm for half a month. Don't talk as if you've been cut off from the world for a long time. That wonderful trip ended just like that. Lin Xing sighed. I feel a lot of emotions, but I can't really put them into words. Hey, the energy in that place is too thin. I feel like I can't even breathe. You can't blame us for exaggerating. Yuan Shi casually rolled on the grass, then stood up like a carp. He walked forward and patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder. Speaking of which, what's next? Yun Nuoxing muttered to herself for a moment, then realized that everyone was looking at her. She could not help but be stunned and said, "Anyway, we're still in the world of the mausoleum. We still have to go back to participate in the trip to the secret realm later. You guys should recover your strength first. There are many things here. As for me, I have to deal with this fragment. Number 2, how do I use this thing?" Zero took the fragment that Yun Nuoxing handed over, tossed it in her hand and said, "Maybe it should be like this." Yun Nuoxing was puzzled, but before he could be puzzled for long, Zero shouted softly, grabbed the transparent ball, and slapped it between his eyebrows. The transparent ball directly penetrated his brain. Yun Nuoxing shuddered, his eyes rolled back, and he fell straight to the ground. Everyone was shocked. Is this really the correct way to use it? Zero laughed. This fragment, there are many things that you can fuse with it. There's nothing wrong with pressing it directly into the brain, of course. After saying that, she smiled and gave a thumbs up, but everyone felt that something was wrong. Zero suddenly trembled, and the smile on her face froze instantly. Everyone was stunned as well, and they took a step back at the same time. They looked at Zero in surprise, then glanced at Yun Nuoxing. At this time, the latter floated up by herself, floating 10 feet above the ground with her eyes closed. Zero was in a similar position, as if the two of them had turned into keys again. "I swear that I won't be surprised if I see anything again today," Yao Hua said calmly. Everyone nodded. The half-month journey was amazing enough. At this time, they felt that their minds were much calmer, and they would not be surprised if they saw anything strange again. That being said, what happened next still made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Yun Nuoxing and Zero floated in the air. Behind them, the 5 black rings appeared again and slowly rotated behind them. A transparent aura appeared above their heads and gathered above them. Everyone was familiar with this aura. It was their soul power. No, it was not like ordinary soul power. It was more like their souls. Yuan Shi suddenly trembled. "I think I know what's going to happen later." "What?" Nightmare could not help but ask. Yuan Shi's cheeks trembled. Before he could say anything, the souls that floated out from Yun Nuoxing and Zero completely merged in the air. Then, the transparent ball that Zero had slapped into Yun Nuoxing's head floated out again and slowly entered the merged souls. Then, the ball released a faint light, and the soul slowly became more substantial. Its shape also slowly changed. From an irregular round shape, it began to elongate and gradually became a blurry human figure. "Holy shit, I think I've also thought of something incredible." Nightmare immediately broke out in a cold sweat. This time, there was no need for the two of them to reveal anything. Everyone thought of something. The souls of Yun Nuoxing and Zero, as well as the fragment that contained the heavenly god of primal chaos, these 3 things fused together. The humanoid soul started to solidify. In the span of a few breaths, it became a seemingly real figure. Ming's heart trembled slightly. This familiar face was just like the familiar face she had seen in the first few years. He had long black hair, black eyes, and an energy wave that she was most familiar with radiated from his body. However, this was not him. Everyone knew that this seemingly thin figure was not the person they were familiar with. An extremely terrifying aura radiated from his body. It was so terrifying that it could crush all elements in the world. This mausoleum world trembled slightly because of his appearance. However, it did not seem like a tremor of fear. Instead, they could actually feel a sense of intimacy radiating from this world. It was as if they had seen their former master appear once again. Primeval forbidden heavenly god of primal chaos, quarter moon, Yuan Shi could not help but murmur in his mind. A drop of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. What was going on this time? One of the most powerful beings of the primeval age had appeared before them. That body was extremely solid. It did not seem like it was formed from a soul. Everyone could even see the texture of the body. It had legs and a shadow. It did not seem like a ghost. This was a real existence. As if she had gradually awakened from 70 eras of deathly silence, Quarter Moon opened her eyes. Her eyes were a little dazed. When a ray of clarity flashed past, she came to life. Her black hair fluttered behind her, and her black robes fluttered without wind. An extremely terrifying aura leaked out, causing everyone to almost suffocate. However, this aura only appeared for a moment. It disappeared in an instant. They hurriedly gasped for breath, and cold sweat poured down their faces. So, have we finally reached this step? The ethereal voice was slightly stiff. It was a voice that they were familiar with. However, compared to that familiarity, it did not have a trace of softness like Yun Nuoxing's. Instead, it had a hint of indifference and toughness. Quarter Moon lowered her head and looked at Yun Nuoxing and Zero. She took a deep breath and said, "After dozens of eras of planning, we have finally reached this crucial step. Countless years, countless times. The latter part of her sentence was like a low murmur to herself. No one could clearly hear what she was saying. No one dared to prick their ears to listen to what this god of ancient times was whispering. Does she have memories of those years? Those years? Those years when the soul projection was reincarnated. How do you know? I guessed. Yuan Shi and Nightmare were the type of people who were not afraid of anything and would occasionally seek death. At this moment, they were also murmuring without any scruples. It was easy for people to think that something was repeated so many times, and then they would think of how many times they had died during reincarnation. The two of them murmuring was nothing, but it scared everyone so much that they broke out in cold sweat. However, perhaps because the two of them were murmuring, Quarter Moon heard the voices outside and finally came back to her senses. She let out a long sigh of relief and raised her head. Her black eyes looked straight at everyone, and the two of them were dumbfounded. "Oh, there's someone here," Quarter Moon said indifferently. Everyone was stunned and their cheeks trembled. "And there are quite a few of them. It seems that this child is much more outstanding than me." Quarter Moon lowered her head to look at Yun Nuoxing again and said, "I just don't know how many of them will stay by my side in the end." This murmur was very soft, and not many people heard it clearly. However, those who heard it clearly felt their hearts skip a beat. They had an inexplicable bad feeling. "You are the children of the Nine Gods' Temple." Quarter Moon raised her head and looked at Yao Hua and the others. Her eyes were clear, and her indifferent black eyes contained a kind of wisdom that others could not see clearly. She did not look like a remnant soul left behind from a distant era. She was more like a god who lived in the present and knew the past and the present. The beginning of the 139th era. The time is just right. There's still time, from the beginning to the end. Quarter Moon did not speak to anyone. She only murmured to herself. Everyone could understand what she was saying, but they did not know what she wanted to say. "I don't have much time left," Quarter Moon said indifferently. Everyone perked up. She seemed to be about to say something. Quarter Moon raised her head and looked straight at everyone. Her voice was indifferent, calm, and natural. "Are any of you his closest relatives?" All of them glanced at each other, and then they shot their gazes towards Kaming, Binger, Little Moon, and Yu. If it was in terms of close relatives, then only the four of them. Ming and the others looked at each other. Then, Ming nodded and stepped forward. She said softly, "I am his wife." Everyone suddenly spat out mouthfuls of saliva. Yuan Shi and the others directly fell to the ground, twitching and unable to get up. Even Little Moon and Yu sat on the ground in a mess. They looked at Ming in disbelief. If Yun Nuoxing was still awake, she would probably teach her a lesson. Quarter Moon was stunned when she saw the group of people lying on the ground. She looked at Ming thoughtfully and said softly, "There are survivors among the angels?" This topic was quickly brushed aside. Quarter Moon did not confirm whether Ming was telling the truth. She just took out the Netherworld Ruin sword from Yun Nuoxing's body. Then, with a shake of her hand, she threw it in front of Ming. She stood upright on the ground and said, "Oh, then you can go and die first." The air here instantly froze. Everyone widened their eyes in disbelief, and looked at Quarter Moon and Ming in shock. "Yuan," she subconsciously shouted, "why? Why? There is no reason." Quarter Moon looked at him indifferently. Instantly, Yuan she felt like thousands of arrows were piercing through his heart. He took a few steps back, his whole body covered in sweat. A person's blood sacrifice is needed to open the last lock, which is the so-called sacrifice. If it can't be opened, he will be the one to die. Quarter Moon pointed at Yun Nuoshing. Yuan Shi and the others' faces immediately darkened. "You said that you are his closest kin. Do you have the resolve to die for him?" The crowd also fell silent. This question was not only directed at Kuming, but it was also directed at them. If what happened today was their loved ones, and they had to exchange their lives for their loved ones, what would they choose? Give up everything? Ming immediately clenched her fist. Her beautiful eyes flickered slightly for a moment as she stared intently at Yun Nuoshing, who was suspended in midair with his eyes tightly shut. Even his aura could not be sensed. Some gentleness flashed through her eyes. She had never wavered from that answer. From the very beginning until now, therefore, she pulled out the Netherworld Ruin sword with determination. She adjusted the length of the sword, and then, "Ming, you have to reconsider." Netherworld Ruin's voice rang out in Ming's mind. Ming only laughed, and then stabbed himself without hesitation. The sound of the sword piercing into the body came very suddenly. Everyone was still staring at Quarter Moon in midair in fear when she heard the sound. She looked down in shock and saw Ming lying in a dark golden pool of blood. The Netherworld Ruin sword had pierced through her body, emitting a dark purple light. Everyone could feel a strong sense of sorrow coming from the huge sword. Wow, so straightforward. Everyone was shocked and at a loss for what to do. Even Xian Yu was slightly stunned. He hadn't expected the angel to be so straightforward. Yuan, she gritted his teeth. He wanted to roar, but Quarter Moon only waved her hand and sighed. She said something that confused everyone. All right, you win. Congratulations on passing." Quarter Moon sighed. She waved her hand, and Ming floated up with the Netherworld Ruin sword. However, she had already fainted and could not hear what she said. She waved her hand and had the Netherworld Ruin sword move out of Ming's body. The wound was still there, but it was no longer bleeding. Quarter Moon placed Ming beside Yun Nuoshing and snapped her fingers. A crack appeared on the latter's wrist. Some golden red blood flowed out and merged with a drop of Ming's blood. Then, the drop of blood split into two. One shot into Yun Nuoshing's heart, while the other landed in Ming's heart and merged with it. "I was lying." Xuanyue's calm words brought everyone back to their senses. When they looked at him again, their expressions were different. He had been very calm and even a little cold, but now there was a faint smile on his handsome face. There was an expression of relief between his brows. Sacrificing a person in exchange for his life is a lie. He doesn't have any destiny. Quarter Moon smiled faintly. "It's just that I don't have much time left. I don't have much time to test whether someone is trustworthy or not. I don't have much time to entrust this matter that concerns me and this child to someone. This is the fastest way I can think of." Quarter Moon sighed softly. "This is a matter of great importance. The person I need is someone who can depend on this child's life. Someone who will not betray him even if they have to give up their own life." Yuan Shi and the others were stunned. "I haven't been betrayed many times. It's just enough to change a person's temperament. So I've changed. I no longer trust anyone other than those who can entrust their lives to me. I also no longer doubt anyone. If I betray someone again, I'll at most kill another person or a group of people." When Quarter Moon said this, she was still smiling faintly. Everyone shuddered. This person, this god, was never a good person. Even he said so himself. About that, isn't Little Star your reincarnation of half of your soul? Yuan-Shi scratched his head and asked, "Little Star? Is that the child's name?" Quarter Moon glanced at him. Her gaze was very calm. Yuan-Shi didn't feel any pressure, but he still couldn't help but shudder. "His name is Yun Nuoshing," Yuan-Shi said. Xianyue nodded and sighed. "Yes, that's right. These two children are half of my soul. They carry half of me. However, Yun Nuoshing is only logically connected to me. He is himself. After being reincarnated for dozens of eras, the necessary connection between us has been erased. I am Xianyue and he is Yun Nuoshing. Logically speaking, I am his past life, but that is only logic. All that is left of us is a weak karmic connection. He is no longer the complete me. Now, he is no longer the complete me. And he can't be the complete me. Seeing that the connection between him and me is so weak that even I can't sense it, I know that the plan of dozens of eras has succeeded. After today, the last connection between him and me will be completely severed. From now on, he will be himself. He has just inherited the life of an unlucky person. To him, that is just a memory that can be ignored like a story. However, this connection will probably still be recognized on the day when he becomes a god. In the end, we can't avoid this point. We can only let this child be fully prepared. Quarter Moon sighed and muttered to herself, "It's this era. It's this era." Suddenly, he seemed to have discovered something. His eyes couldn't help but twitch. His gaze slid all over Yun Nuoshing's body and finally fixed on his chest. With a wave of his hand, the whirlpool zither flew out of Yun Nuoshing's heart and landed in his hand. Hugging the 6-feet-long zither, Quarter Moon was stunned. Her eyes were filled with nostalgia. She couldn't help but sigh. This is Sister Xian Yin's. So, he has already seen Sister Xian Yin. In this life, he might succeed. No, he must succeed. There is no more time to wait for the next life. Everyone was stunned again. However, Quarter Moon didn't pay attention to them. She looked at Yun Nuoshing and smiled. The receptive spirit godly body has also grown well. It seems like leaving the origin of the godly body behind was the right thing to do. Yuan-Shi was shocked. The origin of the receptive spirit godly body was left behind by you. Quarter Moon turned around and smiled at him. I am the receptive spirit godly body. Everyone turned pale with fright. It's just that when I found out, I sealed the origin of the godly body. Well, most of the reason was probably because I was afraid of death. In my time, there were 2 receptive spirit godly bodies, but they both died. So when I was still very weak, I sealed the receptive spirit godly body so that it wouldn't manifest itself forever. Quarter Moon smiled. Even enlightened gods have days when they are weak. Everyone smacked their lips and sighed. When Quarter Moon was still very weak, she probably panicked when she found out that she was the receptive spirit godly body. Sealing the origin was also a last resort. What happened after that? Yuan-Shi asked. What happened after that was when I became an enlightened god. At that time, I started to make preparations for this matter. I discovered the origin of the godly body that I had sealed in the depths of my soul, so I went with the flow and set it to be unsealed at that time. It can be considered a success. The receptive spirit godly body seems to be growing well now, Quarter Moon said. The matter he was talking about was naturally the matter of leaving it for the future. It's not bad. It's just that the entire realm of the gods probably knows about it, and there are many people who are still thinking about Little Star. Yuan-Shi smiled bitterly. Quarter Moon didn't look surprised when she heard that. It's normal. The origin of the receptive spirit godly body has always been coveted by people since ancient times. It has always been there, but no one has really obtained it. Chapter 901. This child doesn't need to participate in the competition among the younger generation of this era. The influence of the path that I have arranged is enough to support him to ascend to the post-celestial tier. He only needs to walk the path that he wants to walk. Titles like God's favored one, genius, and heavenly gifted talent are not important to him. Really, nothing is important. Quarter Moon gently stroked Yun Nuoxing's head and sighed softly. However, the words that came out of her mouth left everyone speechless. She was indeed a heavenly deity. This child has his own mission. Although it is a mission that I have imposed on him, it is something that he must do. One day, the enemy will come knocking on his door. If he does not have the strength to protect himself and the people around him by then, everything will be in vain. The only thing that I can do now is to delay the arrival of this time, as much as possible. When the time comes, he will have enough strength to protect himself and everything that he loves. Quarter Moon said faintly. Nightmare could not help but ask if, it's really if. I don't mean anything else. If boss does not, what will happen? Quarter Moon's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. If this child unfortunately dies in this life, or if everything fails, the last thing that I have left behind will make this world where the realm of the gods is located. Quarter Moon raised her hand high and waved it in front of her. Along with the void, it will be reset. Everyone broke out in cold sweat again. From the beginning until now, the cold sweat had already soaked their back. This is something that can't be helped. We need to have a little backup plan as a last resort. Moreover, this is just a matter of bringing the void into turmoil a little earlier. Quarter Moon sighed faintly. Once every 20 eras, it is the end of this era. This is also the end of this era. If this child fails, there is still the great reincarnation that can erase all the distortions that we have caused to this world. Yuan Shi and the others trembled violently. The great reincarnation? This was something that had been hidden for a long time, and no one knew about it. All of a sudden, their curiosity was piqued. He could not help but shout, "What is the great reincarnation? Oh, you guys don't know? Well, normal people don't know about it. Even the gods might not know about the great reincarnation. Although I did not experience it with my own body, I still know a little bit about it in the great reincarnation. Plus, the great reincarnation was not a secret in our era. Even the gods would know about it." Quarter Moon said faintly. Everyone smiled wryly. Was something that only the gods knew not a secret? However, no one interrupted her. They had heard of the 3 words, great reincarnation, before. Perhaps they had seen it in ancient books, but they still did not know what it represented. They only knew that it was the dividing point between 2 eras. They only knew that it happened once every 20 eras. The great reincarnation happens once every 20 eras. It is also the dividing point between the end and beginning of an era in the realm of the god. This is a self-activity of the great primordial realm. Based on the time of the 8 primordial realms, every 20 eras, that is, it happens once every 20 trillion years. The great purge of the primordial realm. The primordial realm's own activity, self-destruction, self-collapse, and the entire great primordial realm returning to zero, returning to a state where there is nothing. From the single primordial realm to the 8 primordial realms, it is unavoidable. In general terms, it is the end of the world that is easiest for you to understand. However, the scope of this is not the worlds that you know, but the entire great primordial realm. This is the extent of the great primordial realm's self-activity. When the primordial realm was first born, order, rules, and energy were all in a normal state. Later on, when the world was born and life was born, these existences would consume these 3 factors of beginning. To give birth to a weak life, how much order, rules, and energy would be consumed? When a powerful individual is promoted, even more factors of beginning will be consumed. When these 3 factors are consumed to a certain extent, the world will announce that it has reached its end. It will self-collapse and dissipate into the void. By the same logic, the entire great primordial realm also has these 3 factors of beginning. When they are consumed to a certain extent, the great primordial realm itself will be completely reshuffled, destroying everything. Everything will return to zero and return to its original state of chaos and nothingness. Then, everything will start anew. Order, rules, and energy will return to their original state. Of course, things like the end of the world happen every moment. Whether it is the lower realm or the eight elements realm, it is the same. However, the Great Samsara is a complete self-cleansing event for the Great Primordial Realm. It is just that it will last for 20 eras. Other than the powerful gods among the gods, no other life will have any chance of surviving. Of course, those who are directly protected by the gods are exceptions. However, those who have that kind of power have already become gods. Quarter Moon's voice had been very indifferent. He had experienced it himself. During the samsara, he had experienced it a few times. It was just a memory fragment. However, the crowd who listened to him in a daze did not expect this at all. They simply thought that the Great Samsara was a symbolic event that happened in the middle of the transition between two eras. Now that they thought about it, in the gods' realm, countless huge forces were once born. However, many of these forces could only be seen from ancient books. They could no longer see any trace of their existence in the 5 large regions of the gods' realm. Only those transcendent existences, those super forces that once had gods, had survived from that distant era. So this was the reason. Those famous forces that had disappeared did not survive the Great Samsara of the Great Samsara of the Great Samsara of the Great Samsara of the Great Samsara and disappeared in that great purge. Quarter Moon waved his hand. Dozens of images appeared in front of him, projecting the outside world. Some were of the gods' realm, and some seemed to be of other worlds. He looked at those images and suddenly sighed. Look, these people on the road. Some of them are from the lower realm, and some are cultivators from the gods' realm. Everyone looked at it attentively for a while. Yuan Shi nodded. Yes, I see them. What's wrong? They never knew about the existence of the Great Samsara. They don't know what will happen on the day of the Great Samsara. Quarter Moon let out a long sigh. His eyes seemed to be unfocused, but also seemed to be focused on something. For a moment, everyone seemed to be able to see all the living beings in the world from his eyes. They live in their own worlds, busy or leisurely every day. Cultivators are working hard to cultivate, joining forces, and constantly strengthening themselves. Mortals are calculating their daily necessities and their short lives. No one knows that there is an inevitable event called the Great Samsara that is slowly approaching on the timeline. This inevitable event can never be avoided. No one knows that this event will happen in less than an era's time. Countless worlds, countless glorious worlds, no matter how magnificent their history is, everything that was once treasured, the entire Deyuan realm will be destroyed in this violent turbulence. After saying that, Xianyue let out a long sigh. Sometimes I envy those annoying people. Ignorance is bliss. The ignorant are fearless. They don't need to worry about these things, and they don't need to care about these things that happen at the top of the world. They only have a few decades to 300 years of lifespan. Even if the Great Samsara happens 1,000 years later, it has nothing to do with them, because they've already lived through this short life. The more we know, the heavier we feel this world becomes. We care about the lives of the people, yet we destroy their worlds mercilessly, all for the sake of creating a peaceful place to protect more people. Even though we still fail in the end, the Great Samsara still requires the gods to use their own strength to resist it. That's the power that comes from the self-destruction of the grand primordial realm. Everything within it will self-destruct as the Great Samsara happens. All that's left is the strength of the gods themselves. Everyone was silent. Their eyes flickered. Looking at the sorrowful Quarter Moon, they couldn't help but lower their heads. The deep sorrow in his voice made them curious and wanted to ask, but they didn't dare to open their mouths to ask. Ding! A crisp and pleasant sound came from the side, attracting everyone's attention. Quarter Moon also turned her gaze and looked at Yun Nuoxing, and then looked at Ming, who was beside him. She smiled faintly and said, "The fusion is complete. This way there will be no mistake." "What did you do to them?" Yuan, she asked. "This child is about to inherit everything that I have, including the power that I once had. It's just that the huge amount of power has now dissipated, and it can't help him to reach the level of a god. I didn't look at his memories, but I know about Yun Nuashing from the sub-body, which is another child. The remaining power should be enough for him to cross the demonic and demigod levels in one go. These are not important. What's important is," Quarter Moon paused, "the element of chaos." At the mention of this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. They already knew from Yun Nuashing that the power of the Beast of Void was a strange body of energy that was born from the materialization of the element of chaos. The violent power that destroyed the balance was a special product of the extreme mutation of the element of darkness. It was extremely violent and chaotic, and it made their hearts palpitate. I also left this power to him, but this power is too chaotic, too violent, and uncontrollable. It's ineffective against order, and even the wielder will be affected by it. When I was still a god, and before I became a god, my life form was subtly changed a few times due to the influence of the element of chaos. In the end, I reached a stable state with great difficulty. Although I still have the appearance of a human, I can no longer be called a human. The remaining human characteristics in me have also been obliterated. Although these can't be seen, and it won't show on my body," Quarter Moon said. I thought that you would become strange, and grow a few more tentacles, bald, dyed hair, and have a crooked mouth and nose or something." Nightmare stared at her. Everyone fell to the ground, sprawled on the ground. This god of darkness still had no scruples with his words. Quarter Moon looked at him in surprise. "What an unexpected and wonderful idea! But that's already a change in the form of life. It's a change in the form of a race. I'm only talking about the change in the form of life. From a material life form to a chaotic life form. In short, it's very strange. It's not an energy life form, not a material life form, and not an elemental life form. It's a strange existence. If I have to describe it, it's somewhat similar to the origin life form, but it's not in the same category as them. Take this little girl for example. She was originally a human, but I can see the traces of change in her soul. She should have changed from a human to an angel. Her life form and life form have changed. Her race and life form have changed from a human and material life form to an angel and energy life form," Quarter Moon explained. After explaining, she looked at her hands thoughtfully and frowned. "Then, am I a human, a chaotic life form, or a god, an unknown life form? Oh, I don't know. The moment you become a god, you're no longer a human. Your life form hasn't changed, but your life form has changed from a human to a god. Although you still retain some of the characteristics of a human, these have changed again under the subtle influence of the elements of chaos. I don't know. I really don't know." Everyone was speechless. This god was really something. Her life form had changed again and again. Ahem, I've gone off topic. Quarter Moon coughed softly and patted Yun Nuashing's head. She said, "The elements of chaos are extremely unstable. It's a very unstable factor, but it's a necessary trump card. In the future, we will have to use it many times. The elements of chaos are of the dark side. To put it simply, it's evil. It's just that I don't quite agree with this definition, so I've always said that it's the dark side. The elements of chaos are of the dark attribute, but we can't directly define it as evil. It's very powerful, and the dark attribute can easily affect its wielder. Let's not talk about an old monster like me who has lived for a very long time. This child is quite pure. However, if he inherits the elements of chaos and my memories, he won't necessarily be able to withstand it because his mind isn't strong enough. However, as long as he doesn't self-destruct, everything will be fine. So, to prevent him from self-destructing, I've added a powerful lock, this little girl. When necessary, she can stabilize him or stop him from self-destructing. So, this lock can only be borne by someone who is willing to sacrifice their life for this child. I am an undead that walks in the darkness, and all the soundless listen to me. I am the symbol of darkness, the representative of darkness. I have never felt that I have anything in common with light. Instead, I feel that darkness is extremely close to me. My title of Chaos Deity is also the result of me choosing darkness and using the element of chaos to upgrade myself. The seed of darkness has already been planted in this child's heart, and he has also inherited the element of chaos. If nothing unexpected happens, he will probably walk on this path as well. This will be the key point for him to reach the level of God. It's just that the soul receiving divine body is of the holy element, which is also the light element. This might be a bit contradictory. Quarter Moon sighed. Seeing that everyone was confused, she couldn't help but be stunned. Don't you guys know? What's that? Yuan, she asked in a daze. When you first ascend into the demigod tier, you have to choose the 5 main attributes of order: chaos, light, darkness, and non-elemental according to your own affinity to condense the seed of origin to prepare for your ascension into the ranks of gods. It takes a whole beginner divine tier to prepare for your ascension into the ranks of God. There is a suppression in this place, but I can feel that almost half of you are already at the demigod tier. Why don't you have any seed of origin? This child is only at the demonic tier. How can he have an seed of origin? Quarter Moon was also stunned. Everyone was confused and looked at each other. In the end, all of them shook their heads vigorously. No, I've never heard of it. Quarter Moon was also stunned and opened her mouth wide. After thinking for a while, she scratched her head suspiciously. Or was it during our era? This was the most efficient training method. I'm not sure. Maybe after the change, you guys have some more efficient and simpler method. However, this child has accidentally condensed the seed of origin. This also means that he is very suitable for the training method of the ancient era. At least, he should be quite compatible with the training method after the beginner divine tier. Actually, I think it's because our masters did not tell us. Yao Hua did not know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed his forehead. After thinking for a while and confirming that he had not heard of such information, he nodded and said, "Yes, our masters have never told us about the later stages of God. We'll know when the time comes. Moreover, in the realm of the gods have not appeared, and the heavenly gods are nowhere to be seen. The god emperors are considered the strongest fighting force here," Nightmare said. Quarter Moon rubbed a strand of hair and thought for a while. Then she said, "The laws of heaven and earth have changed. It's nearing the end of the era. The great cycle is approaching, and the laws of heaven and earth are not suitable for the birth of more champions. This is normal. However, near the end of the era, there should be an extreme reversal, just like the final radiance of the setting sun. When that time comes, the great cycle will happen soon. Probably, according to the current time, there should be." After pondering for a while, Xianhua took out the Book of the Ages of Yunhua Planet and Zero. She borrowed it and made some calculations, then said, "It's only the beginning of the 139th era. It's only been 1,000,000 years. However, with such fluctuations of order, perhaps in the next 1,000 years there will be a great reversal. At that time, powerful beings will appear like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, and there will be plenty of deities. Then, not long after, it will be the great reincarnation, just like the time before death. Let's have some fun." Everyone's cheeks twitched. Yuan Shi counted with his fingers and felt that something was not right. That's not right. Didn't they say that the great cycle happens once every 20 eras? Then the next time will be the 140th era. Our era has just begun, and it will happen soon after 1,000,000 years? That's right. An epoch. Is 100 million years very long? Xianhua said very normally. Everyone was shocked. Is it not long? Quarter Moon nodded seriously. Yes, it's not long. Everyone was speechless. The total lifespan of these youngsters was probably less than 5-digit. It was difficult for them to understand how long 100 million years was. Only divine champions like Quarter Moon could understand it. Perhaps to them, it was just a few blinks of an eye. Well, they still felt that it was very long. It was so long that 100 million years sounded like an eternity to them. To add another 100 million before that, they could not even think about it. Alright, it's about time. When they completely complete the fusion and stabilize, my time will be up. Quarter Moon let out a long sigh. It's so long, so long. 70 eras of waiting. In this life, I'll definitely be able to go on. I'll definitely be able to reach places that I couldn't reach before. He raised his head and looked at the reddish-black sky. It was as if he wanted to see through the vault of heaven, as if he had seen something. He turned around and looked at Ming and Yun Nuoshing. The huge penetrating wound on the former's body had silently healed. Both of their hearts had the same mysterious golden rune. The light of the rune fell directly into Quarter Moon's eyes, making him feel completely relieved. This is all I can do. The influence I left behind will always affect you. Don't be afraid, don't worry. In this life, you're not alone. You've never been alone. Quarter Moon's voice was incomparably gentle. His tone was as if he was talking to his own child or the younger generation. After he finished speaking, he let out a long sigh. Quarter Moon's eyes suddenly widened. He waved his arm in front of him, and a mysterious wave suddenly spread across the entire world. It passed through the secret realm and spread beyond the realm of the gods. I, dark string moon of the primal chaos deity, the monarch of darkness and chaos, and the apotheosized god of the primal antiquity era, declare in the name of the last deity of darkness and chaos. Quarter Moon swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Everyone could see that his hands were trembling. This era is over. It's now the 139th era. A new era has arrived. The ancient souls of the dead will return to the cycle of reincarnation. The primal antiquity era has completely come to an end. As these high-spirited words fell, everyone's hearts suddenly trembled. They suddenly felt that in the sky, in the void, something had suddenly collapsed with a loud rumble. At this moment, something had quietly dissipated, leaving an inexplicable emptiness in their hearts. Grief quietly spread in this moment. In the realm of the gods, the surrounding mountains stood loftily. Under the mist, the shapes of the shapes were the heads of giant dragons. It was like a dragon's tomb. There were thousands of dragon-shaped mountains here. On the highest mountain, a woman in a pink dress suddenly stood up from the pavilion. The wave of energy spread across the entire world at an infinite speed, affecting her. Her saintly and demonic aura couldn't help but ripple. A pair of beautiful eyes stared blankly at the sky. Her jade-like hands clung to the stone pillar of the pavilion with great force, slightly trembling slightly. The deity's declaration, the end of the era, the primal antiquity era, this time, the primal antiquity era has completely come to an end, but, Brother Moon, are you really willing to accept this? Chapter 902. His thunderous words reverberated throughout the entire realm of the gods, stirring up unconcealable waves in the void. Even the void trembled because of his words. The remaining rules and orders from the primeval age also collapsed at this moment. Between heaven and earth, a strange fluctuation suddenly reverberated, as if something had been broken, and the heaviness from the vault of heaven had been removed. In fact, this world had really changed. The old rules and orders had disappeared. With Quarter Moon's declaration, the remaining rules and orders from the primordial era would no longer affect this new era. The rules and orders of this era would flow more smoothly, and the part of the rules and orders that had been dominated by the remaining power of the primordial era would return to nature. It's over. This time, it's really over. The era that belonged to us has completely come to an end. Quarter Moon sighed deeply, and 2 streams of tears fell from her eyes uncontrollably. Her empty eyes stared fixedly at the sky, and she was in a daze. Everyone in the god realm who could sense the true meaning of this matter felt empty in their hearts. They stood up in confusion and looked around. They didn't know why, but they always felt like their hearts were empty. Among them, there was an extremely small number of people who had survived from the High Ancient Era, but they had lost their control and sense of that era. There was also a small number of people who might be the descendants of the heavenly gods of the High Ancient Era. They had the bloodline of the gods, so they could sense this fluctuation. This fluctuation felt familiar to them, but they couldn't find any trace of it. The birth and end of an era needed to be announced by a person who had supreme control over the rules and order. In the distant far ancient era, after a long period of time, the announcement of the end of the era finally came. The primordial era was chaotic enough. There was chaos everywhere, and the realm of the gods was not peaceful. Let it end quietly like this. I'm already tired. Quarter Moon glanced at Yun Nuoshing, and with a wave of her hand, the transparent ball on his body floated into Yun Nuoshing's body. Then, with a sudden tremble, it broke down into countless bright white spots of light and merged into Yun Nuoshing's body. Along with it, everything that remained in the ball of light merged into Yun Nuoshing's body, including the elements of chaos. I'll leave this era to all of you. Quarter Moon turned around and looked at everyone who looked inexplicably sorrowful. She smiled, and when she saw that the ball of light had completely merged into Yun Nuoshing's body, a trace of satisfaction flashed across her eyes. Then, she slowly closed her eyes, and her body gradually faded away. In the end, she completely disappeared. The soul energy formed by Yun Nuoshing and Zero's souls also quickly returned to their bodies. Boom! Just as the 2 souls returned to their respective owners' bodies, the mausoleum world suddenly trembled violently. A terrifying energy fluctuation was like a giant dragon that was slowly awakening from its slumber, as if it was the ruler of all things in the world. That energy instantly spread throughout the entire mausoleum world, causing Yuan Shi and the others' legs to go soft, and they almost knelt down. However, this energy only appeared for a moment, and disappeared as quickly as it came. In an instant, it completely disappeared without a trace, and retreated back into Yun Nuoshing's body. Then, the pair of colorful eyes slowly opened, and the colors of elemental energy were reflected in his eyes. The space around him also gradually fluctuated, and balls of colorful energy rapidly appeared around him. The dazzling golden light element, the pitch-black but invisible chaos element, the azure lightning element, the green wind element, the silver-white metal element, and the dazzling 5 elemental elements spun around Yun Nuoshing's body like a hurricane. It was extremely beautiful. Like the Lord of Elements, he controlled all the elements and slowly descended from the sky. F***CK. He has all 10 elements. Yuan Shi sucked in a breath of cold air and his cheeks trembled. No, to be specific, there are 12 elements. The ice element and chaos element are all mutated elements, and they are all in their purest states. Do you still want me to live? How was he going to let her live? Heavens! Earth! Hurry up and subdue this monster. I can't take it anymore. Yao Hua's legs went soft and he finally knelt down. He frantically reached his hands toward the sky, wanting to ask why the heavens were so unfair. Forget it. The boss is carrying the power from countless years ago. If you have the ability, jump into the cycle of reincarnation and reincarnate for dozens of eras. Then, come back and inherit the power of this life. It's also very scary, Nightmare said as he kicked Yao Hua. Everyone instantly felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. They quickly retreated and waved their hands. Forget about it. They couldn't play with it anymore. Reincarnation sounded very scary. Zero and Ming were the first to come back to their senses. They landed on the ground and looked back at Yun Nuoshing, who was slowly descending while being surrounded by the 12 elements. Zero scratched his head. He didn't feel anything. After all, this was Yun Nuoshing's business, and he was only passively watching for a while. He was just an assistant to Yun Nuoshing. Yo, idiot number 1, are you awake? Even if you aren't, it's time to wake up. Wake up from that long nightmare. Zero looked at Yun Nuoshing's confused eyes, waved his hand, and said softly. Yun Nuoshing blinked, and his eyes were slightly listless. After a while, they became even more deep and empty. Although his eyes were looking forward, everyone felt that his gaze seemed to be piercing through time. They didn't know where he was looking. He seemed to still be immersed in that complicated memory and couldn't pull himself out for a while. Looks like it'll take a while. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Zero calmly waved his hand, then looked at Ming and said, "You should be fine." Then, you should know something, right? Ming stared blankly for a moment, before her jade-like hands suddenly grabbed the front of her robes. She lowered her head to take a look as the pure white wings on her back lightly flapped a few times. A moment later, she raised her head and lightly nodded. "It's good that you know. This idiot, I'll leave him in your care in the future. I'm almost at my limit." Zero shrugged and sighed softly. There was a touch of distress and helplessness on his face. Ming nodded without hesitation. The mark that was engraved in her heart and Yun Nuoshing's heart made her understand many things in an instant, including the many things that Yun Nuoshing was carrying. She couldn't help but feel a little distressed. There were so many things and such a heavy burden that had been passed down from ancient times. It was his destiny that he couldn't escape in this life. Zero, Ming, and Yun Nuoshing didn't know who they were. They only knew that they would come knocking on their door. In Quarter Moon's previous life, she touched on some taboos and provoked them. From then on, she started a plan that lasted for dozens of eras. Perhaps it was to fight against them, or perhaps it was to expose the taboos that she accidentally touched. There were both possibilities. These were all things that Quarter Moon wanted to do but couldn't do. Now, Yun Nuoshing had to do not only for these things, but also to protect himself and the people around him before they came knocking on his door. Yun Nuoshing suddenly made a sound that sounded like he was talking in his sleep. His turbid and deep eyes gradually regained some clarity until those colorful eyes became lively and lustrous again. The moment he opened his mouth, he said something that no one could understand, causing everyone to be confused. Yun Nuoshing still looked confused. He shook his head and looked at Ming. Ming? This time, everyone finally understood what he said and heaved a sigh of relief. Ming took a step forward and nodded. She held Yun Nuoshing's face in her lily-white hands and said, "Brother, you're awake?" "Awake?" Yun Nuoshing looked at her blankly and looked around blankly. Everyone looked at him, as if he was a stranger and was stunned for a moment. After a while, they heard him say, "I'm back. I'm back. Don't be immersed in it. This is not the ancient era. This is the 139th era. Don't sleep in the past, idiot number 1, Zero said as he patted his head in annoyance. "I'm back," Yun Nuoshing murmured softly. After a while, he let out a long sigh of relief and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with the colors that everyone was familiar with. His gentle gaze made people feel very comfortable. This time, it was indeed the idiot that they knew who had woken up. "Brother, what happened to you just now?" Little Moon came over and asked curiously. Yun Nuoshing smiled and rubbed her head. There was still some confusion on his face. After sorting out his words, he shook his head and said, "It's hard to say. It was a big dream, a dream that lasted for dozens of eras." Yun Nuoshing sighed deeply and retracted the elemental power that was circling around him. Perhaps to Ming and the others, he had only fallen asleep for half an hour. However, he felt completely different. His soul and consciousness were immersed in that memory dream. It contained all the memories of Quarter Moon's life and many of his memories from the reincarnation cycle. Although the memories from the reincarnation cycle were not complete, it was still an extremely long period of time. He went through it completely, as if he had gone through tens of thousands of eras. Although this memory dream made him feel as if he had experienced it himself, it was more like he had seen his past through the eyes of others. Other than being filled with emotions, he did not feel that his memories were in a mess. He only saw a lot of memories. These memories were now stored in his memory star ocean and became another memory core. Suddenly, I want to go out and find some people to meet up with. Yun Nuoshing suddenly smiled and said something that made everyone confused. Brother Yun, are you Quarter Moon or Brother Yun now? Yu mischievously pounced on Yun Nuoshing and asked with a grin. Me? He turned around and hugged Yu, placed her on the ground, and rubbed her soft hair. After thinking for a while, Yun Nuoshing frowned and said, I'll still be me. I can be Quarter Moon and I can also be myself. However, for the time being, I'll still be Yun Nuoshing. Now that I think about it, my identity as Quarter Moon can be frozen for a while. I don't need it for the time being. Yuan Shi and the others let out a long sigh. What a complicated relationship. People like Yun Nuoshing really had their own genealogy, their own lineage, and their own family. Now that they had even inherited the memories of the past, they did not even know who they were anymore. You said you want to find people to meet up with? You remember those people from the past? Zero asked curiously. I remember now. Yun Nuoshing nodded and smiled. I remember some very special people. I'll go and meet them when I have the time. Everyone did not ask anything. Needless to say, those who could make him use the words remember and special should be terrifying people of that level. It was better for this group of ignorant juniors to keep their mouths shut. After chatting and laughing for a while, everyone was filled with emotions. They could not help but say one after another, I'm witnessing the birth of a legend. After a while, Yun Nuoshing coughed a few times and cleared his throat, causing everyone to pause and subconsciously shut their mouth. Then, the former laughed and said, speaking of which, that little brother void being, since you've woken up, you shouldn't be lying down. This sentence stunned everyone for a moment. Only then did they remember that the void being from the 8 elements realm, who had a fierce fight with chaos in the 5 elements realm, had also returned with them. However, the things that happened just now were too eye-catching, and the matter was of great importance. They had all forgotten about the void being who was the victim from the beginning to the end. Hearing this, the youth who was curled up in a ball in the distance, with purplish-black hair that gradually turned into the color of the void, suddenly turned over and jumped up. He scolded, What are you doing? What are you doing? I've been dragged here and there by all of you, and even fooled around for tens of millions of years. Now that you've finished your business, can't you let me have a good rest now that I've rested? Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then could not help but laugh bitterly. This lord's resentment was very strong. Seeing that everyone was looking at him strangely, the void youth's handsome face also froze. His cheeks twitched and he waved his hand in annoyance. My name is Ji Kun. As you all know, I'm an extranomological life form born in the void. Moreover, I was born in this world, in the void of the primordial realm that you all call the realm of the gods. Yes, we all know this. Why don't you tell us in detail? Yun Nuoshing smiled. There's nothing to say. The void youth who called himself Ji Kun pouted and muttered, then sighed. I've been born in the void for a very long time. I've been floating aimlessly in the depths of the void, and I don't have the energy to do anything. When I'm bored, I'll look at the balls of light in my body. There are many living creatures in the balls of light. Well, most of them are the same as all of you, or rather, the same as us. After all, the human race is a big race in the void. When he said the words in your body, everyone's expression changed, and they all felt a little strange. However, when they thought about how void lifeforms were the representatives of the void, it was indeed very vivid. I've been floating leisurely in the void for 100 million years. One day, I suddenly had the idea to enter the ball of light world and look at the planets and stars inside. I think it's quite fun, but I'll get bored after a while. When I'm bored, I'll leave and head to the next world. When I feel tired, I'll sleep on the spot. Sometimes I'll sleep for tens of thousands of years. Anyway, no one will discover my existence. Ji-kun spread his hands and said, "What a dull way of life." Everyone could not help but complain. "There's nothing I can do. I'm just an avatar of the void, but I don't have to control anything. This void will still operate on its own. I'm just an avatar born by the void to observe itself." Ji-kun shook his head and said, Continue." Everyone laughed dryly. Ji-kun nodded. "Later, I came to this place. I've heard the name Realm of the Gods many times outside. It's the largest world in the 8 elements realm. I came because I was very interested, but no one outside could find this place. After I arrived, I realized that the world barrier of this world had been tampered with, and there's also a strong barrier outside the realm of the god. It's these 2 factors that prevent others from discovering the realm of the god. However, I'm an avatar of the void, so these methods do not affect me very much. Or rather, it's not targeted at me, so I was able to discover that the person who did these 2 things was an extremely powerful lifeform. Its existence occupation is comparable to half of the void." "Wait a minute. What's this existence occupation?" Yuan Shi asked. "It's what Father said just now. There are 3 factors of origin in this world. How much is needed to give birth to a lifeform, and how much is needed to have a lifeform evolve. The more it consumes, the greater its existence occupation," Zero explained. "That's it. That powerful lifeform was so powerful that its existence itself used up half of the void's existence occupation. However, this is something that happened a long time ago, so it won't affect the void at this time." Ji-kun waved his hand and continued, "Later, I came to this world. As soon as I saw the bustling realm of the gods from the starry sky, I felt sleepy and fell asleep. Then, one day, I suddenly felt a little uneasy. Before I could react, a ball of light rushed out from that bustling world and took me away. Moreover, it took me to a narrow and desolate void. I still remember what happened after that, but I'm still muddle-headed." Ji-kun said with a bitter smile. "An unexpected calamity." Everyone sighed as well. An unexpected calamity. Just by sleeping here, he was mysteriously taken away. Moreover, he was gone for tens of millions of years. What kind of situation was that? "I can't even sleep properly now." Everyone was speechless again. Why was this guy talking about sleep all the time? Was sleep the only thing left in this guy's mind? Well, that's it. I don't have anything else to do other than sleep. I've been wandering in the void for hundreds of millions of years before I remembered to make myself a body. It's not a lump of black stuff floating around in the void. Well, my original form is more comfortable. To me, it's also a way for me to return to the void. It's like returning to my mother's womb." Nightmare could not help but blabber. That sentence left everyone shocked. That's about it." Ji-kun laughed happily. Everyone was even more shocked. "Anyway, that's it. After that, I felt that I had caused a huge ruckus in that void. The negative energy in my body was also cleansed. When I woke up, I was back in the void where I was originally in." Ji-kun swayed around, his right foot constantly rubbing against the ground. He said, "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. I'm tired. This time, I need to find a quiet place to sleep for tens of millions of years, so that I won't be taken away by strange things again." Everyone laughed bitterly. Chapter 903. In the world of the mausoleum, a crack suddenly appeared. On the other side of the crack was a black land of nothingness. That was a boundless void. Nothing existed there, but a strange life form had been born there. That's it then. Well, anyway, I still have to thank you this time. Tens of millions of years is nothing to me and the void, but it can't be wasted in vain. Who knows how much it would be to use it to sleep? Cough, cough. Anyway, that's it. Ji-kun rushed into the crack. His carefree appearance made it impossible for others to tell that this guy was actually very lazy. His head was full of sleep. I'm going back to rest. I've been corroded by the elements of chaos for tens of millions of years, and my injuries are not light. I have to go back and rest. Well, I still remember the coordinates of the realm of the gods. When the time comes, I might come back to play with you guys. You guys are the first group of people I know. After sending Ji-kun off, the group stood in place and looked at each other. Then, they spread their hands and looked at Yun Nuoshing and Zero, who were standing at the front. These two big shots were nothing. They were both true undying old monsters. Zero sighed. Perhaps it was because he was an origin life form born from time, while Ji-kun was a void life form. They were both origin life forms, and they belonged to the same race. Moreover, this race had a small population. Now that he saw another origin life form leave, he more or less felt a little emotional. However, this was not a big problem for him. After all, he had lived for tens of eras. Yura moved in front of Yun Nuoshing and sniffed. She was sniffing something on his body with all her might. Her jade-like hands grabbed onto his sleeves and said, "So strange. I smell a very familiar scent from Big Brother Yun's body." Everyone was stunned when they heard that. They all subconsciously sniffed, but there was no need for that. They could directly sense the scent. When they heard Yura say that, they also felt a very familiar scent from Yun Nuoshing's body. It was so familiar that this scent was almost integrated into their lives. "It seems to be the scent of the realm of the gods," Ji-ning said softly. Everyone was shocked. After carefully distinguishing for a while, they all nodded in agreement. This scent was indeed very similar to the scent of the realm of the gods. Yun Nuoshing was also stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, she roughly understood the situation. It should be because of the pillar of creation. That iron pillar? Lin Xing used his hands to draw a line from the ground to the sky to show how huge the pillar of creation was. This thing gave him enough of a visual impact because it was really too big. It was so big that he could not see where the top was. Yun Nuoshing nodded and said, "There are pillars of creation in every corner of the realm of the gods. Each of the 9 god temples is in charge of one. Its existence is closely related to the survival of the realm of the god. But as for who made it, I don't know. Quarter Moon doesn't know either. Back in the ancient age, when the realm of the gods was invaded by many powerful beings from the outside world, when the situation took a turn for the worse, Quarter Moon turned on the destruction switch of the pillar of creation and burned the entire realm of the gods. The boundless flame of karma burned the entire realm of the gods. However, the pillar of creation also helps to stabilize the existence of the realm of the gods. It is also a protective measure for the realm of the gods to survive the great samsara. Oh, speaking of the great samsara, I finally know what's going on." Yun Nuoshing suddenly became interested and turned to look at everyone. Everyone quickly waved their hand. "You don't have to say any more. We all know. You just said it yourself." Yun Nuoshing was stunned. She scratched her head embarrassedly and continued, "Quarter Moon has the right to control the pillar of creation. In reality, he is just the maintenance staff of the pillar of creation. Maintaining the pillar of creation in the entire realm of the gods is his job. That's why the 9 god temples are guarding the pillar of creation. Now that the right to control it has fallen into my hands, the pillar of creation is closely related to the realm of the god. That's why you can feel the aura of the realm of the gods from me." Everyone looked at each other and could not help but roll their eyes. "Sigh, the things in your hands are getting better and better. We can't catch up. Yuan Shi sighed and patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder. Why do I have to catch up? Yun Nuoxing smiled and sighed deeply. The more I get, the more I know, the more I inherit, and the more responsibilities I have. Now I know a lot. It's the truth that I have been searching for ever since I woke up. Who am I? What is the meaning of my existence? When these two answers are revealed, well, I'm more or less at a loss. Yun Nuoxing let out a long sigh. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. The truth that he had been searching for 20 years was suddenly revealed one day. It made him feel a little overwhelmed. After knowing all this, he also had to do what he had to do after knowing all this. It was something that had been passed down from the ancient era. Quarter Moon did not do it. What he had to do was not only for this, but also to have the power to protect himself and the people around him before they arrived. Who are they? He had asked this question many times. Now that he had inherited most of Quarter Moon's memories, he still could not get the answer. He only knew that they were very powerful, far more powerful than a few heavenly gods. Everyone knew that his emotions were complicated. At this time, they did not say much and just let him ponder on it alone. Everyone tacitly kept their mouths shut. Speaking of which, when Quarter Moon left behind this part of his self, he knew that you might have a problem. Yun Nuoxing suddenly patted Zero's shoulder. In most of the memories that I inherited, there was a monologue in his heart. He felt that there might be a problem with another part of his self. I didn't expect you to really lose your memories. Fortunately, this part of his self still has a complete part. Zero could not help but smile bitterly. This is something that I can't control. Then, according to what you said, the meaning of my existence has been reduced by half. You don't have to devour me to obtain the complete memory. I only have to slowly activate the arrangements that I have made in the dark side. Speaking of which, I can't see half of the plan. Yun Nuoxing suddenly said. It should have been forgotten by me. But that doesn't have much of an impact. Perhaps Father did not think that half was important, so he did not forcibly brand it. Zero shrugged and smiled. After all, in these 70 eras, other than Father's memories, I have also been making arrangements everywhere. I just have to guide you to it at the right time. Now it seems, it's quite dramatic. Yun Nuoxing smiled. Yes, it is quite dramatic. Zero let out a long sigh. Although his efforts over the years were not in vain, half of it was in vain. Many of the things that he had set up could not withstand the cleansing of the great reincarnation. Although the pillar of creation could block most of the power of the great reincarnation, it could not completely nullify it. It only preserved the divine realm. Even so, after going through so many great reincarnations, the divine realm's surface had shrunk quite a bit. Now, the divine realm was only 2/10 of its original size, or perhaps even smaller. As for the reconstruction of the divine realm, gods had the power to move mountains and seas. Earth elemental gods could create a huge floating island out of thin air with their own power. It was not impossible to create a planet with some time and effort. The reconstruction of the divine realm had been mentioned in the past generations. However, the divine realm was made using a very special method. It contained a large amount of mysterious power of order and order. Simply adding some ordinary stones to make up for the volume that was blown up by the great reincarnation would not have much effect. It would also make the divine realm's composition more complicated. Therefore, this matter was still in the imagination stage. As for the actual reconstruction, unless the first god who created the divine realm came back to life and did it himself. Let's talk about something else. This topic is too heavy. Yuan Shi coughed dryly and changed the topic stiffly. Speaking of which, we are still in the arcane realm. Wow, I wonder how chaotic it is outside. Xue Feng and the rest recalled and jumped up excitedly. Before we met, we were split into 2 groups. One is still in the arcane realm, and the other, yes, they followed us to the five elements realm. Yao Hua nodded calmly. Everyone smiled bitterly. No one had expected this to happen. Moreover, they had left for half a month. Traveling across realms was really the most amazing trip in history. Then let's not delay any longer. Let's get out of here quickly. Lin Xing waved his hand. Just as he lifted his foot, he was stunned. Where is the door again? Everyone was speechless. Ahem, I'll open the door. Yun Nuoxing coughed dryly and waved her hand. With a thought, the mausoleum realm suddenly trembled. Then, a huge door opened in midair. However, the scene on the other side of the door was not inside the sealed heaven and earthland, but the arcane realm. The arcane realm of the three floating islands was in the middle of the last floating island, outside the temple. Let's get out of here first. This mausoleum realm is now under my control. If there is a need, we can come back again. Yun Nuoxing waved her hand. Everyone nodded and rushed toward the space door in midair. There were some things that one would not remember until they were about to face them. For example, the Jiesu realm was greatly changed by the sealing power from the sealed heaven and earthland. Now, the entire arcane realm was filled with seals that suppressed one's strength. When everyone came out of the mausoleum realm, they were suddenly shocked. Ah, I forgot. What about the seals? We're behind by half a month. If we go back rashly, we'll be beaten to death, right? Yao Hua suddenly shouted, giving Yun Nuoxing and the others a fright. Speaking of which, didn't you say that you wanted to recover inside? Why did you suddenly come out? Yuan Shi was also puzzled. Who said we wanted to come out in a hurry? Nightmare widened his eyes. Everyone thought for a while and looked at Lin Xing, who was shrinking his head. The latter quickly smiled apologetically. I forgot. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Yun Nuoxing smiled and said, Didn't you feel it? After going out for half a month, we came back stronger. The seals have weakened. Hearing this, everyone carefully sensed it. Indeed, they felt that they were stronger than before they set off for the five elements realm. They could control much more power than when they went out. It's a small compensation. Although we're definitely not as strong as those people who stayed in the secret realm for half a month longer than us to recover their power, at least we won't be beaten up so easily. Yun Nuoxing shrugged. It should be because of me and Zero. After breaking the seals here, the strength of the seals from the mausoleum world has slowly weakened. After all, this world is now under my control. There's no need for that sealed land to exist anymore. Then why are you still in the virtual realm? Yuan Shi looked at him in astonishment. Yun Nuoxing's cheeks trembled as he let out a long sigh. After all, the effects of the seal are still there. If we want to remove it, it will take a long time. At least before our trip to the secret realm ends, the seal should still exist. Everyone! Didn't you say a lot of nonsense? Yun Nuoxing thought for a while and nodded seriously. Yes, a lot of nonsense. Everyone was speechless. Was it really okay to be so straightforward? Well, you guys go ahead. I'll leave first. While everyone was talking, Zero laughed softly. His laughter was slightly unnatural. However, the others did not notice it. Yun Nuoxing, on the other hand, turned around immediately. When he turned his head around, he saw a somewhat strained expression on Zero's handsome face. The aura around his body was unstable, and veins were protruding from his forehead and arms. It was as if he was enduring some kind of extreme pain. A complicated emotion flashed within his golden eyes. Yun Nuoxing immediately understood what was going on. His voice became calm. You can't hold on anymore? Well, I've reached my limit in this half a month. Zero forced a smile and said, Don't worry about me. In the end, I'm just a failure. You still have things to do. Don't worry about me. Hey, idiot number one. Remember what I said. You must go on in this life. You already have a lot of advantages. Before they find you, you must go on. This era, this world, The next time we meet, don't be merciful because of me. This wisp of consciousness of mine is about to disappear. When I appear again, I'll be the crazy me. At that time, Zero's hurried words alarmed everyone. They quickly turned around and saw that the blue veins on Zero's body were popping out. His aura was unstable. From time to time, a crazy look would flash across his eyes. The time around him was very chaotic. However, in the next moment it suddenly became quiet. Everything became quiet. At that time, I won't be merciful either. Zero raised his head and looked at Yun Nuoshing with a crazy look. He laughed wildly. Yes, I know. Yun Nuoshing nodded calmly. When we meet again at the beginner god level, at that time, between the two of us, only one of us will survive. Zero laughed wildly and licked his lips. There was an evil smile on his face. Whether it's the spiritual godly body or quarter moon, they're all mine, they're all mine. At the end of his words, Zero moved closer to Yun Nuoshing and grinned. I want to eat your flesh. Boom! Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in front of them. A violent roar came from the space, accompanied by the sound of space shattering. Everyone raised their heads and saw a gap in the sky. At this moment, it was slowly recovering. When they looked beside them again, Zero's figure was no longer there. I'll wait for that day. Yun Nuoshing took a light breath and smiled at everyone. In the end, everything has to return to the right track, right? That strange journey has completely ended. Let's just treat it as a dream. After Yun Nuoshing finished speaking, she turned around and walked out of the floating island. The group of people behind her looked at each other blankly and quickly followed her. Hey, what's wrong with that guy? Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but ask. He's crazy. Yun Nuoshing glanced at her and said calmly. He's persisted from the second half of the ancient era until now. He couldn't become a heavenly god. He severed his cultivation time and time again, and then cultivated from the beginning to the divine spirit level again. After going through each great reincarnation, he's gone crazy. He's no longer the Zero you know these days. Now, he's only left with the obsession of madness. He inherited Quarter Moon's resentment towards this world and hatred towards them. He's just a lunatic. Yun Nuoshing let out a long sigh. The next time we meet, he'll be a beginner god. At that time, one of us will definitely fall. Unfortunately, I've already lost once, and this time, silence. At this point, there was suddenly silence. Yun Nuoshing did not know what to say. Everyone could only be silent, looking at each other. They all sighed in their hearts. Yun Nuoshing seemed to sense that the atmosphere was a little heavy because of him. She waved her hand and smiled faintly. It's okay. I have my reasons why I can't lose. I can't lose. This life is very important. Every step must be taken carefully. I can't leave such an important matter to a lunatic. Similarly, I can't go crazy. By the way, don't tell anyone about the elements of primal chaos. Yun Nuoshing's expression suddenly became strange. The elements of darkness caused irreparable damage to the realm of the gods in the ancient era. Now, they even set up a barrier outside the small divine land. Although they erased it from the natural order level, causing this world to not give birth to any more elements of darkness, my elements of darkness and elements of primal chaos are inherited from the ancient era. The elements in my body have also been replaced with the elements from the ancient era. The elements in that era were much stronger than the elements in this era, no matter how you look at it. The fewer people who know about the elements of darkness, the better. I don't want you to talk about it because I'm afraid you'll get into trouble if you talk about it. It's fine as long as we know about this, Yun Nuoshing said. Everyone nodded solemnly. They also knew how important this matter was, so they wouldn't talk about it casually. If this matter were to spread, it would be to the extent that they would become enemies with the entire world. At that time, Yun Nuoshing, who was already a little crazy to begin with, they couldn't think about it anymore. especially when this guy was half the ruler of the realm of the god. If he died, this void would also be destroyed prematurely. Tsk. Thinking of this, they wouldn't court death even if it was for themselves. Then let this secret rot in their stomachs. Chapter 904. So, you're just going to follow me like this? Yun Nuoshing turned around and looked at Fu Qing, who had been following him silently without saying a word. This girl had not said a word ever since she came back. Her presence was as weak as Qin Yan's. If Yun Nuoshing had not suddenly remembered that there was still a person to deal with, Fu Qing would have probably followed him without saying a word. What else? Fu Qing raised her head and looked at him with her vertical pupils. Don't you have any other way to follow me? This image is too. Yun Nuoshing coughed. Everyone looked thoughtful. Fu Qing was a demon. She was one of the demons who had followed Quarter Moon. She had crossed dozens of epochs to wait for the person who had died young to return. However, although that person had recovered a lot of her memories, she had forgotten about them. It was a small matter for her to follow them again, but her image was too different from ordinary people. However, it might not be a big deal. In the realm of the gods, where there were countless races, perhaps others would just treat Fu Qing as a special race. Everyone sat down cross-legged to cultivate and rest. After circling the 5 elemental realms and the 8 elemental realms, the seal in the Jiasu secret realm had weakened. In short, there were various reasons. Everyone expressed that they needed to sit down and rest. This short period of time was not a big deal. After a while, they would be involved in a high-level battle in the 8 elemental realms, which was not something the 5 elemental realms could compare to. However, they had stayed in the 5 elements realm for half a month. Putting aside the not-so-peaceful place, their life in the Star Origin continent made them miss it a little. It was peaceful, and their biggest battle was against the Beast Tide. Perhaps they could understand the distant ambition of the Yun Nua planet, and they could also understand it, because that kind of life was indeed very beautiful. However, they were in the 8 elements realm, and perhaps this kind of life was always parallel to them. Now that the seal in the Jiasu secret realm had weakened, everyone felt that they could recover to the 4 or 5 seals of the demon rank. For those who were weak to begin with, they could recover to the 4 or 5 seals of the demon rank. However, this was only a normal level. Due to the weakening of the seal in the Jiasu secret realm, they could only recover to the 4 or 5 seals of the demon rank. If it was someone who had been staying in the secret realm all this time, it was not impossible for them to recover to the 7 or 8 seals, or even the demigod rank. Transform into something else? Fu Qing pondered for a moment, a thoughtful look on his face. Yes. Of course, it's not a problem if you don't transform. I'm just asking. If you want, you can stay in my spiritual world. There are a few people in there. You won't be lonely. Yun Nuoshing nodded. Then, she coughed dryly. It's mainly because you're interested in everything. I'm just asking. You can decide for yourself. There are a few people in your spiritual world? Fu Qing's gaze suddenly became strange. She lowered her head and muttered. Yun Nuoshing felt a little awkward. Then, she looked up and looked at her with an even stranger gaze. In the past, you didn't allow others to enter your spiritual world. Hearing that, Yun Nuoshing was stunned. After thinking for a while, she understood why. Once, Quarter Moon became an enemy of everyone in the divine realm because of the dark element. She had inherited his memories. Now, she knew that the extent of it was not as simple as treating everyone as an enemy. The friends who had once fought side by side with him, the forces that he had once been on good terms with, almost all of them had betrayed him overnight. It was not an exaggeration to say that everyone had betrayed him. It was just that he had no family. Everything was forced. He was forced to the point of no return. He was forced to pick up his weapons and point them at his former friends, causing him to go to the extreme of the dark side. Before he was completely betrayed, He had already betrayed everyone. From then on, the concepts of justice and evil no longer had any meaning in his heart. He only faced those who deserved to die and those who did not. He was no longer afraid of anything. He no longer cared about anything. Anyone who raised their weapons against him would be given an extreme death. He would not show any mercy just because he had known someone before, nor would he forgive anyone just because someone begged for mercy. Wherever he went, he would only leave behind a devastated land and a prelude to death. That was the darkest memory of his life. Several ancestors of the Nine Gods Temple had also been injured because of him. However, during that long period of careful companionship, he had finally let down his guard and truly accepted a few of his closest old friends. Among them, Yun Nuoxing felt that the ancestor of the Light Temple had really contributed a lot. If it were not for her, the knot in Quarter Moon's heart would not have loosened so quickly. That miraculous crazy woman. His heart was once cold, just like Yun Nuoxing himself in the past. Although he looked fine, his cold heart was always difficult to let go of, even the people around him. On the surface, he did not seem to be on guard against them, but no one knew what he was thinking in the depths of his heart. However, in the end, he really let down his guard against them. If this had happened to him more than 10 years ago, he probably would not have dared to think about it. Now he knew how the unshakable seal on the chains of his heart came about. It was placed on him by Quarter Moon during that period of time. She sealed many of his emotions, in order to prevent him from being swayed by his emotions and leaving behind any future troubles. That seal had persisted for so many years and had not dissipated. It was only until today that a crack quietly appeared on it. Moreover, behind the seal, there seemed to be 2 vague imprints. Shaking his head, Yun Nuoxing shook off all those thoughts of the past. He coughed dryly and said, "Anyway, that's how it is. The past is the past. That, cough cough, you can get to know me all over again. That's right, I'll borrow this sentence." Fu Qing looked at him with a strange expression. This guy had been deep in thought for a full 5 minutes, and that was all he said. However, she did not have any special requests. She was the one who said that she wanted to follow him, so there was nothing wrong with following his arrangements. In the past, Quarter Moon had also asked them to change their forms and follow by her side. Now there was no exception. She would just treat it as if everything had returned to how it was before. This time, she would just follow by his side and continue to look at this world. Fu Qing nodded and said, "All right, then I'll go into your soul. I won't disturb you from the outside." "What's there to disturb?" "That's not what I meant." Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Fu Qing did not say anything more to him. Her body shook, and she turned into a thumb-sized green light spot on the spot. Then, she entered his soul. His soul trembled slightly, and he felt that another new guest had appeared. In the soul world, Ziyi and the others raised their heads, pushed away the cards on the table, and stood up one after another. They saw a green light spot fall from the sky and turn into a little girl in front of them. They clapped their hands and laughed happily. "Welcome, welcome. You're the 8th guest of our Soul Inn. Let's get along well." Yun Nuoxing and Fu Qing were both stunned. The former counted with her fingers. Ziyi, Lanexener, Kaixia, Yishi, Xiaobai, Feng'er and Ming, who had stayed for a while. So Fu Qing was the 8th guest? So that's how it was. That's how it was. Hey! This is my soul world. What do you think this place is? Yun Nuoxing was flustered and exasperated. This was his soul world, all right? How could they live here so naturally? Nonsense, this is my home. Ziyi replied him domineeringly, causing Yun Nuoxing to be instantly speechless. It seemed that what he said was not wrong. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The consciousness of the little person in the white ball of light, the Een spirit fire, was also jumping up and down on the table. It seemed to agree with Ziye's words, because the latter said with satisfaction, "Look, look, even little Een agrees." Yun Nuoxing covered her face speechlessly. Before she could say anything, Ziyi shouted from inside, "There's everything here. Make whatever you want to eat and drink. Do you want to come over and play cards later?" Yun Nuoshing looked up at the sky in a daze and muttered, "This is my soul world. You can't mess it up like this." Fu Qing stared blankly at the group of people grabbing her and pressing her down on the table. She didn't say a word from the beginning to the end. It was more like Ziyi and the others were talking to themselves. She couldn't help but let out a long sigh. I finally know how that cold and heartless fellow in the past became so obedient now. Yun Nuoshing covered her face speechlessly. Even the demons knew how powerful Ziyi and the others' mental pollution ability was? After a long sigh, she couldn't be bothered with these things. Anyway, her soul world had already been tormented to such a state. Just let them do whatever they want. Thinking of this, Yun Nuoshing sighed again. She felt that the number of times she sighed today was uncountable. Why do you keep sighing? Don't you know that sighing makes you grow old? A loud voice came from behind, causing Yun Nuoshing to turn around. She saw Chu Yingzhan, who was dressed in men's clothes, walking over with her right hand on her waist. Seeing her distressed expression, she couldn't help but raise her slender eyebrows. "What's wrong? Is there something that our deity can't figure out?" "No." Yun Nuoshing sighed. She waved her hand and said, "Have you recovered?" "Of course. Don't you know who this fairy is? I'm the #1 fairy in all of history. My talent is top-notch. It won't take long for me to recover." Ahem, how many demon rank seals have you received?" Yun Nuoshing coughed dryly, interrupting her nagging. 6 seals. It's higher than I thought." Chu Yingzhan squeezed her jade-like hands and said. She didn't seem to be angry at being interrupted. Then, she patted his shoulder casually. It's okay. Although you're still in the emptiness realm, this fairy won't leave you alone. There's always a time to stir up trouble. You're so impressive outside. Now, you just have to be a little man and obediently hide behind us." What? Yun Nuoshing suddenly widened her eyes. "I can still use dozens of divine artifacts. Why do I have to hide behind you and ask for protection? I'm not that weak, am I?" Chu Yingzhan blinked and slapped her forehead. "Oh damn, I forgot." Yun Nuoshing smiled bitterly. He reached out and poked her forehead. "Okay, I promise you. I won't mess around here." "Hey, you really understood what I was trying to say." Chu Yingzhan slapped Yun Nuoshing's chest. Yun Nuoshing sighed and looked at her. "You said it the last time you came in, right? Hey, about that. I was afraid that you'd be depressed." Chu Yingzhan used her elbow to poke Yun Nuoshing's arm. Then, she coughed lightly and said, "Speaking of which, we still have a debt to settle with you." Yun Nuoshing was stunned. That day when you rushed out alone and planned to die together with Zero," Chu Yingzhan said angrily. Then, she suddenly calmed down and looked at him calmly. "Harem man, what is your identity?" This inexplicable question confused Yun Nuoshing. Identity? What identity? Was it his current identity? Or what? To put it simply, what identity do you think you have right now? Chu Yingzhan said seriously. "I don't know much about you. At least, I don't know as much about you as Ming and the others. But I know that you have multiple identities. You have a previous life, right? What do you think?" "Me?" This answer has been confirmed a long time ago. It won't change much now. For the time being, I plan to live quietly as Yun Nuoshing, which is the identity of this life, Yun Nuoshing said. "In other words, you plan to live as a mortal for the time being?" Chu Yingzhan raised her eyebrows and said meaningfully. Yun Nuoshing didn't hear any special meaning in her strange voice. He looked at her suspiciously. After a while, he nodded. "That's good." Chu Yingzhan suddenly said something that confused him, but before he could slowly think about the meaning of this sentence, he felt a sudden pain in his stomach. Yun Nuoshing sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Chu Yingzhan, who had just punched him, and said angrily, "What are you doing? I'm punching you." "Why?" Chu Yingzhan blew a breath of air at Xiao Xiuquan and said, "This punch is to punish you for leaving the team without permission. You're not a saint. Don't shoulder everything on your shoulders. Mortals have to deal with things the way mortals do. Do you think a mortal is capable of rushing to the enemy alone and fighting to the death?" Chu Yingzhan grabbed his collar with a serious expression on her face. Mei Mao stared at him. Yun Nuoxing thought for a moment. Look at those experts from ancient times who can hold back 10,000 men by themselves. Aren't they also mortals who can block thousands of troops by themselves? That's true. Chu Yingzhan was stunned. After she reacted, she became angry and said, "I'm not talking about this with you." Yun Nuoxing shrunk his neck. He wanted to retort, but when he saw that she was really angry, he could only mutter in his heart. He didn't dare to say it out loud. He was afraid that if he said it out loud, he would be devoured on the spot. "I'm talking about the team. We're a team, aren't we? You have a bunch of friends around you, don't you? The more powerful a person is, the more responsibility they have. Powerful people do more work, but that doesn't mean that you'll die from overwork. Look at Havana and the others. They're in charge of the entire 5 elements realm. How many lives do they have? Quadrillion? Billions? Countless. But you don't ask about everything. You always ignore the people around you and always think that you can solve everything by yourself. You hope that you can take care of everyone, and you don't want the people around you to have a good time because of you. I really like this kind of good person, but look at the people around you. Look at your companions behind you. They were gathered because of you, and this time, they will also take action because of you. Right now, you are a leader, a spiritual leader, a bellwether. You are, and so is that heavenly God of primal chaos. However, none of you clearly recognize your own identities, and you continue to do everything by yourself. Could it be that you want to shoulder this world alone? You want to shoulder all the sins of the world alone? You're really crazy. This sentence suddenly rang out in his mind, and it made Yun Nuoxing a little absent-minded. Ah, yes, it seemed that someone had once lectured him like this. However, whether it was that voice or Chu Yingzhan's lengthy speech, Yun Nuoxing only sighed softly, regardless of whether it touched his heart. The difference was that after Chu Yingzhan finished speaking, he also responded. "This is also something that can't be helped. The burden on my shoulders is a little heavy. If even I need to ask for help from others, who can help me shoulder it?" Yun Nuoxing was a little absent-minded. "Don't you still have us?" Chu Yingzhan stared fiercely at him, and her pretty face was only an inch away from his face. "We all know that the burden on your shoulders is very heavy, and we don't even know the strength of the enemy. At the very least, it could be the threshold of a heavenly god. However, I don't think that, after experiencing all this and knowing all this, we can still stand by and do nothing. You need strength, you need our strength. Everyone is working hard. You're only a mortal right now, so you're also working hard. Everyone is working hard. You can't trust us, but you can trust your 3 sisters, right? They're also working very hard to help you. Right now, they're also working hard to become stronger. Can't you just wait a little longer?" Yun Nuoxing's body trembled, and a complicated look flashed across his eyes. "Don't lose yourself, Yun Nuoxing. From the beginning to the end, you shouldn't have shouldered everything on your shoulders. Perhaps we're not strong enough to share your burden, but one day, everyone around you will become your strength. Quarter Moon's rough instructions should have told you that a person's strength is ultimately limited. Even if you're very strong, there's still a limit. The treasures that he left behind were not opened by you alone. Isn't this hinting to you that you need the help of others?" Chu Yingzhan looked straight into his eyes with a serious expression. Okay, I know, I understand." Yun Nuoxing hurriedly waved his hands and sighed. He had heard a lot of similar conversations. Yuan had said it, Xian had said it, Ming had said it, and now, even Chu Yingzhan had said it. Perhaps his mentality had been wrong from the beginning? These things had troubled him for a long time. In Quarter Moon's memory, he was also exhausted by himself. Perhaps at the right time, Chu Yingzhan's words broke his last line of defense. He stubbornly dispersed the troubles in his heart, and his mood gradually relaxed. He knew what she said was right. He just couldn't face it. He was very worried. He was always very worried that he would make an irreversible mistake because of himself. They can't always hide under your protection. Chu Yingzhan seemed to know where the knot in his heart was. Her expression relaxed slightly, and she also sighed. When the enemy comes, if you can't even survive, how can you talk about protecting them? If one day you're not by their side and they're in danger of dying, how can you protect them? Let go. There's no need to be so nervous. Before death comes, we have countless opportunities to become stronger. As long as you're willing to leave a path for us to follow, we'll be able to become your solid strength one day. When that time comes, you won't have to bear everything alone. Yun Nuoshing slowly closed his eyes and nodded his chin. I understand. I understand, thank you. Did you say that? Chu Yingzhan was also stunned. She quickly let go of him and waved her hand, as if she couldn't stand it, and quickly took a step back. Hey, don't be so serious. Wah, don't laugh like that. It's so disgusting, so disgusting. Chu Yingzhan looked as if she couldn't stand it anymore. She scratched the goosebumps all over her body and hurriedly jumped away. Yun Nuoshing couldn't help but laugh. You've changed back. I don't know if you're really smart or just pretending to be smart. After saying that, he looked up at the sky again. The line of defense that he had been holding in his heart finally dissipated. There will always be time. Just as you have thought this life is it, right? Then let this life be the turning point and the end point of everything. Chapter 905. Yun Nuoshing didn't know if the change in his state of mind would lead to any changes in the future. Chu Yingzhan's words were the last straw that broke his stubborn state of mind. However, before that, he had already been educated many times. Quarter Moon also hoped that he could abandon his previous thoughts. There would always be a limit to a person's strength, and Quarter Moon didn't want him to repeat the same mistakes. Chu Yingzhan bounced back and ran over to Yun Nuoshing. She had a simple-minded look on her face, and there was no sign of the wisdom that she had just said. Hey, what does your chaotic element look like? Let me take a look. Yun Nuoshing was speechless. What? I'm just curious and want to take a look. I haven't really seen the 10th element or something. Seeing her curious look, Yun Nuoshing's cheeks twitched. Just as he was about to nod, he was stunned. Then, he shook his head. I'm still in the virtual realm, so I can't use it. Ah! Chu Yingzhan was stunned. No, you also used the light element when you were in the virtual realm. That's different. Although my realm was suppressed, my divine body wasn't. I could forcibly activate the light element by burning some of my life force. However, the dark element and the chaotic element have a minimum activation limit. Before my realm was restored to the immortal realm, it was impossible for me to activate these two elements no matter how hard I tried. But just now, that's because the power I obtained was too great, and it overflowed outside my body. Once it dissipated, it would be gone. Yun Nuoshing hurriedly waved his hand. Chu Yingzhan was stunned for a while, and her gaze gradually became strange. Looking at Yun Nuoshing, she couldn't help but smack her lip. Hey, unreliable guy. Yun Nuoshing. Be careful, or I'll throw you into the void. Hey, you really have the nerve to do such a rude thing to a beautiful fairy like me? Chu Yingzhan rolled her eyes. Yun Nuoshing was speechless. Yun Nuoshing rolled his eyes and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Other than her face and voice that could be considered female, he couldn't see any other characteristics of a girl. Of course, it could also be that her clothes were too strange. In short, Yun Nuoxing really didn't think that this girl was a girl. When she was careless, she was full of masculinity. She was simply a copy of him, of course. He was a real boy. After resting for half a day, everyone had recovered to the peak that they could reach. The strength that they recovered was uneven. Ming and Bing Er were originally gods, and now they had recovered to the demigod level. Chu Yingzhan was originally a demigod, and now she had recovered to the demigod level. Lin Sheng had just advanced to the demigod level, and now he was at the demigod level. The others were also in different situations. Yun Nuoxing calculated with his fingers and rolled his eyes. Was part of the seal here calculated by percentages? But I found that the situation here is very special. Lin Sheng clenched his hands. He had advanced to the demigod level before coming to the secret territory. When the strength recovers to the limit before being suppressed, it will continue to grow at the same speed. After Yun Nuoxing heard this, he was also stunned and frowned. The speed of recovery of strength is faster than the speed of growth of the original strength. But after recovering the strength to the original limit here, will it continue to grow at the speed of recovery? Lin Sheng scratched his head. Something like that. I discovered this when I recovered to the demigod level. That's a benefit. The secret territory of the Jie Su realm can indirectly increase the speed of cultivation like this. Yun Nuoxing muttered, his heart full of unhappiness. Why do I have to be a demigod? Because you are a power outside the rules, and you are tragically suppressed by your own power. Everyone laughed bitterly. After chatting for a while, everyone was ready to go. Yun Nuoxing was still looking at the pillar temple with a complicated expression in his eyes. After a while, he gently stretched out his hand toward the temple and pressed the air with his index finger. Boom! The heavy sound seemed to have detonated a violent energy storm. In everyone's line of sight, the tall divine palace stirred up billowing dust and slowly collapsed. The pillars separated from the main palace. The entire divine palace was disintegrating on its own. It collapsed vertically and the fragments also sank straight into the ground. It did not affect Yun Nuoxing and the others who were close by. Only the dust that was stirred up by the strong wind blew their robes and stirred up everyone's emotions. It's over, it's over. Yun Nuoxing sighed softly and closed his eyes. A holy aura came from beside him, causing him to open his eyes again. He saw Ming standing beside him with huge wings spread out behind him. The golden Mei Mao was also looking at the collapsed temple in front of them. It's over. Upon hearing his words, Ming nodded and replied, the long 70 eras of waiting is over. Let's go back, brother. There's no need to stay here any longer. Ming turned around and smiled like a flower at Yun Nuoxing. Yun Nuoxing slowly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. He reached out and rubbed her silver-white hair. He nodded gently and held her hand as they turned around. Behind them, a weak pillar of starlight descended from the sky and covered the original spot where the temple used to be, covering the huge hole. The starlight in Yun Nuoxing's eyes slowly faded. He smiled at everyone and waved his hand. Let's go. It's time to get down to business. This secret realm in the void dimension had been turned upside down by people in the past half a month. There was almost nothing to be gained. Other than the people who had seen the first floating island, no one else knew what terrifying things had happened in this secret realm. The people who were still here only knew that there were 2 floating islands floating in the shallow layer of the void. Nothing existed on the first floating island, and the second one could not be entered. A layer of golden barrier enveloped the floating island, and there was an extremely powerful restriction that prevented anyone from approaching. Most people who tried to approach lost their strength when they approached the second floating island and fell into the void. They only recovered their strength when they were very far away. They were so far away that they almost got lost in the shallow layer of the void. There were not many people who knew about the characteristics of the void, but there were still quite a few who were not afraid of death and tried to rush to the second floating island. It was only when someone suddenly disappeared into the void that they began to feel afraid. They all stopped at the edge of the first floating island and waited with bated breath for the island's restrictions to be lifted. They didn't find anything of value on this floating island, so everyone thought that the treasures were on the floating island that they couldn't get close to. In fact, there was really nothing on this floating island. This floating island was just the storage place of the sealed skies land in the modern world. Other than Yun Nuashing and Zero, no one else would see anything. As for the temple that protruded out, it had already been destroyed by Yun Nuashing, leaving behind a pillar of starlight that couldn't be broken through. However, the others did not know about this. There were still many people waiting here. Perhaps some people felt that they were wasting too much time and could not see any hope, so they turned around and left. However, the majority of people were still waiting. Everyone stretched their necks and looked into the distance, praying that this floating island would open. Buzz, then, in the next moment, very suddenly, the restriction on the floating island was lifted. The golden barrier dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths of time, the huge barrier that enveloped the entire floating island disappeared completely. Everyone was stunned. They stared blankly and did not react for a long time. Whoosh! It wasn't until there was the sound of something breaking through the air and a figure flew towards the floating island that everyone woke up from their stupor. They howled and moved, rushing into the void and towards the floating island. "Big sister, are we going too?" There was a group of people gathered in a remote area at the edge of the first floating island. An 8-foot-tall man had his arms crossed and his muscles were tense. He looked very aggressive, but when he spoke to a person beside him who was only as tall as his abdomen, he was very careful and spoke very softly. When the people beside him heard the man's voice, they didn't laugh. They only looked at the figure cautiously. The slender figure knelt on a huge rock. She was wrapped in a tattered black robe. Purple clothes could be vaguely seen under the black robe. Her long purple hair was also covered by the black robe. A pair of purplish-black Mei-Mao stared ahead without blinking, but she did not say anything. The burly man smiled bitterly and shook his head. They had already waited here for a month. Big Sister had always maintained this posture, and had not moved at all. Other than occasionally cultivating, there was no other movement. She was just like a statue. Fortunately, they had found a lot of heavenly treasures before entering this secret realm, so they did not fall behind in terms of rank. After waiting for a while, that figure didn't say anything. The big man and the people waiting at the side also waited quietly without any complaint. They stood at the side like soldiers with serious expressions on their faces. There was a smell of blood on their bodies that couldn't be washed away. Swish! Suddenly, the figure stood up, giving the man a fright. He looked around vigilantly. When he did not find anything, he turned around and saw Big Sister taking off the tattered black robe, revealing a beautiful purple robe. Her purplish-black hair flowed down like a waterfall. On that indescribably beautiful face, there was a beautiful smile that they had never seen before. It also carried an unconcealable longing, stunning the man and the others. Everyone was still in a daze. The girl had already rushed out like the wind. She did not even bother to say a word to them. She left the man and the others looking at each other in dismay. After hesitating for a moment, they gritted their teeth and followed. In the middle of the two floating islands, a large group of people suddenly appeared out of thin air in the shallow layer of the void. When everyone saw the light purple color of the void, they subconsciously opened their rule domains. However, after thinking for a while, they turned off their rule domains. After all, when they first came here, they were fine without their rule domains. It was unlike in the deep layer of the void, where they would get lost without their rule domains. Speaking of which, this trip to the Five Elements realm probably gained more experience. What else is there in the void? Lin Xing could not help but say. That's right. Speaking of this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. They looked at Yun Nuoxing, who was being carried by Ming Ming, and said in unison, "He was instilled with a lot of knowledge." Ahem, that. Feeling the resentment from behind, Yun Nuoxing also trembled. This is something that can only be learned after reaching God level. Why are you unhappy that we let you know in advance? Hearing this, everyone laughed dryly and waved their hands. No, it's just a sentence. After all, our worldview has been refreshed. Yun Nuoxing shrugged and struggled slightly. However, Ming, who was hugging her from behind, said unhappily, "Brother, you can fly by yourself now. When we enter the floating island later, you still have to be carried by me. Be good and don't move." Yun Nuoxing lowered his head and let out a long sigh. Damned seal. Everyone laughed evilly. Yuan Shi and Nightmare laughed evilly and rubbed their hands. Suddenly, they were stunned. Yuan Shi said in astonishment, as someone is approaching quickly, "Didn't we choose a very secluded path? Why is there still someone?" Nightmare was also stunned. Before he could volunteer to rush out and investigate, Yuan Shi pulled him back. A familiar aura. Wait, I think. Before Yuan Shi could finish speaking, everyone stopped. Then, a purple figure suddenly appeared in front of them, giving everyone a fright. However, what happened next stunned everyone. The girl who suddenly appeared plunged into Yun Nuoxing's arms. Then, everyone came to a sudden realization and hurriedly waved their hands and turned around. Yuan Shi was also shouting, "Hey, hey, hey, everyone, turn around! Don't look, don't look! Little Star's wife is here." Yun Nuoxing, who was still in a daze, did not expect such a thing to happen. When he came back to his senses, he saw the purple figure dashing into his arms. It was a pity that there was still Ming Ming behind him. The two women, one in front and one behind, bumped into him like a sandwich biscuit, almost squeezing out his stomach acid. "Girl, my body is so small now, cough cough. I can't stand you bumping into me like that. That familiar aura, that familiar smell." Yun Nuoxing didn't need to look to know who the girl in his arms was. When he lowered his head, as expected, he saw a dark purple head wriggling around in his arms. With great difficulty, Yun Nuoxing finally calmed down the girl who was rubbing against him like a kitten. With a gentle smile, he rubbed Ziyan's dark purple hair and said with a smile, "I'm back." Ziyan reached out her hands to hold his beautiful face. Her red lips gently touched his cheek and she smiled like a flower. "Little Star, I found you." Staring blankly at Yun Nuoxing's colorful eyes, Ziyan didn't ask anything. She didn't know where Yun Nuoxing had disappeared to during this time, nor did she know what he had experienced. However, she could see some slight changes in his eyes, as if his entire person had changed. She didn't ask, because Yun Nuoxing would tell her everything, so there was no need to ask. Yun Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief. First, he taught Ziyan how to condense a soul seed. After the two exchanged soul seeds, he told her everything in their souls. 5 Elements Realm. Quarter Moon. As expected, Ziyan was also very surprised, but there was a hint of regret on her beautiful face. Obviously, she felt a little regretful that she couldn't follow Yun Nuoxing to the 5 Elements realm. As for Yun Nuoxing's previous identity, she was also stunned for a moment, but she ignored it after a moment. She never cared about these things. She only cared about whether Yun Nuoxing was still himself. Ahem. While Yun Nuoxing and Ziyan were whispering to each other, Ming, who was behind the former, finally couldn't help but cough softly. "Brother, these words can be said on the way. Don't you think that this is not a suitable place to talk?" Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing and Ziyan both laughed dryly. Ming pursed her lips, but didn't show anything. This surprised Yun Nuoxing a little, but she didn't say anything at this time. She waved her hand and pointed to the front with her eyes. "Girl, are those people you brought with you?" Ziyan turned around and saw the big man rushing over with a group of people. Nodding slightly, Yun Nuoxing smiled faintly. "It seems that when I left, a lot of things happened around you. Well, it's good that you're fine. I was worried that you would be bullied in the secret realm alone. I left too quickly at that time." Hearing this, Xian felt a little sweetness in her heart, but she just smiled and shook her head. She bent her finger and gently flicked Yun Nuoxing's forehead. "Little star, don't look down on me. I have the 5 elements body. How could I be bullied?" Yun Nuoxing thought about it and couldn't help but laugh. Xian had also recovered her strength as a demigod in the secret realm. Looking at this momentum, it would be good enough if the girl didn't bully others. At this time, the group of people in the distance also hurried over. They were stunned when they saw their big sister being intimate with another person. When they saw that the other person was also a beautiful girl, they were even more stunned. However, they didn't ask much and tactfully lowered their heads. The big man also turned his face away and saluted Xian. He softly called out, "Big sister." "Big sister?" As soon as this name came out, Yun Nuoxing and the others all turned their gazes towards Xian. A bunch of gossipy gazes were all directed towards Xian. The latter's pretty face instantly turned red. She hurriedly waved her hand and laughed embarrassedly. This is for a reason." "Oh, the reason!" Yun Nuoxing also inexplicably laughed. She pressed her hand on Xian's head and scratched it hard. "Girl, did you bully me?" Xian was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Her neck was completely red. She shrunk her head and didn't dare to make a sound. When he saw Xian's reaction, the man's cheeks twitched slightly. His expression was calm, but he gave himself a fierce slap in his heart. He almost slapped himself unconscious and called himself blind. That cold-blooded, decisive, murderous, mysterious girl who was known as the Blood Queen actually had such a girlish attitude? Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw that the big man and the others were all tensed up and didn't dare to speak. She waved her hand and said, "Well, thank you for taking care of Xian all this time. She didn't beat you up, did she?" The big man's face was tense. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "She did beat them up, and the kind that gave them a good beating." Seeing that the big man's face was tense but he looked like he was about to cry, Yun Nuoxing also knew something. She couldn't help but shake her head. Her gaze was a little strange as she looked at Xian, who was standing next to him and whose pretty face was so red that it could bleed. She sighed. Chapter 906. Due to the addition of another group of people, they spent some time familiarizing themselves with the area before flying towards the entrance of the secret plane. On the way, Xian gave Yun Nuoxing a detailed account of the current situation in the Jiasu secret plane. After not seeing each other for some time, the two of them flew a little further away and whispered to each other. Oh, they also brought along Ming, who was still carrying Yun Nuoxing as they flew. As for why they didn't hand Yun Nuoxing over to Xian, no one dared to bring it up. However, Ming didn't seem to say anything either. She listened to Xian and Yun Nuoxing whispering to each other with a faint smile on her pretty face. As for Blockhead and the others, their expressions were about to crack. They didn't dare to show any abnormalities, but their hearts were on the verge of collapsing. Especially when they heard Yuan Shi and the others say that Yun Nuoxing was a man, the extent of their collapse became even more exaggerated. They couldn't keep their zombie-like faces straight anymore. Then, they thought about how Big Sis once said that she had a boyfriend. Seeing the sudden change in the expressions of this group of people beside them, Yuan Shi and the others also had strange expressions. They didn't know what this group of people was thinking about, but it should be related to Xian. During the conversation, Yun Nuoxing found out that nearly 1.5 months had passed in the Pantheon realm, but they had clearly only spent half a month in the 5 elemental realms. Moreover, according to the division of time between realms, the time they spent in the 5 elemental realms shouldn't be too different from the time in the 8 elemental realms. The time of each elemental realm master, that is, the time difference between the origin worlds, shouldn't be too big. Moreover, that half a month is equivalent to half a month in the Pantheon realm. How could there be a difference of 1 month? Yun Nuoshing scratched her head in distress. Everyone also had a puzzled look on their faces. They had inexplicably lost a month's worth of time, making them unable to explain it clearly. Could it be? Yuanshi thought for a while. In the end, we came back from the chaotic zone. Did something happen there? Yun Nuoshing heard this and also pondered for a while. After thinking for a while, she nodded hesitantly. It's possible. That place is the state when the primordial realm was first born. The concept of time and space is very vague. Perhaps time was accelerated in that place. Well, that's the only explanation. We are still in the origin world, and the timeline world did not switch. The only problem is the problem of time. However, this could also be because we crossed realms. After all, the flow of time between elemental realms is at different speed. However, there wouldn't be any difference. But the flow of time in the 5 elemental realms is different time to the elemental realms. And everything of time in the elemental realms. Because we both live in the correct world and receive the correct laws of that world, we are not independent of that world, so we feel the same? Yuanshi asked. Full marks. Yun Nuoshing nodded. It's just that we acknowledge the time rules of the 5 elemental realms. That's why we can't feel the difference between the flow of time in the 5 elemental realms and the 8 elemental realms. Of course, we can't feel it now. When we reach my level, we might be able to recognize it and directly experience what it feels like to have a difference in the flow of time. Everyone. Because there were still a bunch of newcomers, everyone's conversation was completed in their souls. It was fast and convenient, and they weren't afraid of being eavesdropped. After everyone left the secret realm, Xian finished telling Yun Nuoshing what happened in the Jie-Su secret realm during this period. The latter also told them about what happened in the 5 elemental realms, including his own situation. As soon as they came out of the small secret realm, Yun Nuoshing opened her eyes and looked at the Jie-Su secret realm that she hadn't seen for a month. She was stunned for a moment, then inexplicably laughed. She didn't hide her laughter, and everyone was confused. Haha, so that's how it is. This world is really like this. It's really interesting. Chu Yingzhan had goosebumps all over her body. She took a step forward and directly slapped him on the head. She rolled her eyes and said, If you found anything, just say it. Your laughter is really disgusting. After being slapped, Yun Nuoshing rolled his eyes and muttered. However, he shook his head and smiled mysteriously. The main show will be played at the end. Hearing that he was keeping them in suspense, everyone looked at each other and rolled up their sleeves in unison. Hey! Calm down. Calm down. Impulsiveness is the greatest sin of mankind. Yun Nuoshing widened his eyes and said, Ahem, Bieni, now is not the time to solve the riddle. I just found something very interesting. Something interesting? Yuanshi looked at him suspiciously. He knew his brother's temperament. This something interesting could become something deadly if not handled well. He felt that it was better to clarify things now. Yes, something very interesting. Yun Nuoshing smiled mysteriously. With a wave of his hand, he took out a huge sword that looked like a sawtooth and a barb. It was the huge sword that he received from the ritual square in the Jie-Su secret realm. He looked at the sword and laughed again. It's something related to this destroyed world. There seems to be a point not far ahead. Shall we go and take a look? Before anyone could ask anything, Yun Nuoshing said to everyone with a smile. Everyone looked at each other and the corners of their eyes twitched. Then, they nodded their heads in resignation. This guy, can't he say everything in one go? Doesn't he know that keeping people in suspense will drive them to their deaths? The small secret realm that sealed the heavens and earth was at the border between the wood element and the soul element. At this time, the group was walking towards the south and gradually approaching the fire element area. Returning to the Jie-Su secret realm after a month and a half, the atmosphere seemed to have become heavier. Moreover, everyone could smell a bitter smell, as if there was a faint smell of blood in the air, causing some of them to frown. Such a strong smell of blood in the secret realm, 11 holy objects have appeared. Each of them hovered in their own position and never move. The energy in the area where the holy objects appear will also boil. Those holy objects have never been obtained by anyone, even if their strength has reached the demigod level. The center of the area where the holy objects are located is a very vast, invincible area. Those who enter that area, no matter how serious their injuries are, will be resurrected immediately. No one has ever died. Now, countless people are attacking the holy objects every day. Those who are persistent have even died dozens of times in there, most of them killed by others. The few who can reach the holy objects can't withstand the enormous power of the holy objects, and the energy in their bodies is disturbed by the fluctuations of the holy objects, causing them to burn to death. Xian explained softly. The power of the holy objects is very chaotic and violent. It can disrupt the rules and order, right? Like the disorder of time and space. Everyone became excited at once. When they heard the words chaotic and violent, their bodies twitched. When these words were added together, wasn't it that thing? How did you know? Xian was also stunned. She tilted her head and looked at everyone strangely. They had been away for a month and a half. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have known. But something is not right. I don't know about the rules and such, but the disorder of time and space is real. Did you guys go in and take the holy objects when they first appeared? No. Everyone waved their hands and smiled bitterly. They all looked at Yun Nuoxing and winked at her, implying that she should at least say something. Seeing everyone looking at her, Yun Nuoxing could only shrug and spread her hands. She shook her head and said, "This time, it's not the element of chaos. It should be the element of darkness. The element of chaos can directly make space and time become violent. And the rules and order. Even if you can't feel it, you can feel that place is very uncomfortable, as if you are born to reject it. That's the effect of the element of chaos changing the rules and order." Girl, you don't feel that way, do you? Xian thought about it seriously and shook her head. No. Other than the overlapping of space and time, there's nothing else. Yun Nuoxing nodded. That's right. It should be the element of darkness. The holy objects are the key to unlocking the door to the little divine land. It has the power to open the barrier of darkness. If you want to drill a hole in the barrier in a short time, other than the element of darkness itself, no other power can do it. Unless you use a crushing force to force it open, but that would require at least the power of an emperor god. Yuan Shi frowned and thought for a while. In other words, the holy objects are filled with the power of the element of darkness? Based on the current information, that should be the case. Yun Nuoxing nodded. She looked up and suddenly saw something. Ah, we're here. Everyone stopped when they heard this. What appeared in front of them was the sky not far away. There were 11 stone doors. The stone doors were formed by 2 pillars and a semicircular arch at the top. They were made of stone. They looked like ordinary stone, and there was nothing special about them. However, there was a strange energy fluctuation coming from inside the stone. In between the 2 pillars of the stone doors, there was a blue spatial door. It was very similar to the little secret realm that they had entered before. This time, no one went in. They just stood in the distance and watched as Ming flew over with Yun Nuoxing in his arms. The latter held the serrated sword in her hand and waved it twice. Then, she gently stabbed it into the arch at the top of the stone door. Splash! It sounded like something heavy had fallen into water, or like the sound of a heart suddenly beating. This strange sound came from the space. Then, the entire stone door trembled. For a moment, everyone seemed to see a thin layer of red shadow outside the stone door. Then, a red beam of light shot up into the sky from the shadow and exploded in the sky. It expanded into a large ball of red light. At the edge of the ball, there was an irregular shape that extended out. It was like a blood vessel pointing into the distance. No one understood what was going on. They could only watch in confusion. However, they could feel that something seemed to have been triggered. You seem to have done it once before? Before we went to the realm of 5 elements, Chu Yingzhan said strangely. Yun Nuoxing smiled and nodded. This is one of the steps. Although I can't tell if this step is correct or not for the time being, I can't go wrong by doing it. Who knows, maybe I hit the right spot by luck. So you don't know it yourself? Everyone's faces were full of resentment. Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly. After all, it's related to this world. That's it. Even Ming Ming and Ziyan, who were close to him, didn't hear him clearly. The group of people looked at him with strange and astonished gazes. They were stunned and didn't know what to say. This guy was good at everything, but he liked to keep people in suspense. Oh, he also liked to play with his life. Well, you'll know when the time comes. Yun Nuoxing put her hands on her hips and said nonchalantly, there are only 2 results. One is that we see the truth, and the other is, I made a mistake. However, according to my guesses, only the first one should be the answer. Yes. Then, are we going to look for the entrances to these small secret realms next? Zian blinked at Mei Mao. She was smart enough to connect the dots. It should be these entrances are like energy nodes controlling something. I can see the energy flow of these nodes. This giant sword is a control switch. Yes, that's right, it's a control switch. It can reverse the energy flow of the nodes. That's the last point I just noticed, Yun Nuoxing said. So, those are the energy veins in the sky? Yuan Shi pointed her finger at the sky. The scarlet net was like a dense network of blood vessels. It gave everyone a fright. Although they had seen it not too long ago, seeing it again still gave them a chilling feeling. Yun Nuoxing nodded, lowered his head to look at the serrated greatsword in his hand, and said, this control switch is responding to control these energy nodes. If it can move by itself, we should be able to see a sword flying around in the sky, and then the sky is like fireworks bursting with those red veins. Of course, this has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me, right? Back then, when Zai and I destroyed this secret realm, we didn't leave anything behind. Really? Yun Nuoxing shrunk her neck and said weakly. Everyone rolled their eyes in unison. This was hard to say. You said yourself that you had set up a trap that spanned across 70 eras of the river of time. Now that you had recovered a portion of your memories, you probably didn't even know that you had been included in your own plan. Who knew if you would hit the jackpot this time and activate something, and then they would be startled awake to watch. Seeing everyone's suspicious eyes, Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly. After a while, she coughed and said, that's all for now. It seems that we have to look for this energy node. What are your plans? Do you have any plans? The assessment is for me to graduate from the Far Light Academy. Elder Yen Feng said that if I can get a good result in the Far Light Academy, I'll be able to graduate early or something. I thought it would be easy and straightforward. I didn't expect it to turn out like this. Well, it's a little busy for now. Lin Xing, Xueling Feng and the others looked at each other and communicated silently with their souls for a while. Everyone shrugged. Then, Ding Mingyu said, let's meet up with the other Far Light Academy team. We've been away for a while, and I don't know how they're doing. We probably won't be able to help you guys much if we stay here. Why don't we improve ourselves first and wait for you to lead us to a good result? That works too. Yun Nuoxing thought for a while and nodded. Then, she said, by the way, I'll say it again. Don't touch the holy relic for now. You won't be able to withstand the power of the dark elemental. Plus, that's probably not the right way to get it. But I do have a very, very bad idea. Seeing her suddenly smile evilly, everyone scratched their heads in shock. What idea? Yun Nuoxing laughed. 16 holy relic, right? You're saying that we should take all 16 of them, Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as soon as they thought of this. That guy would be beaten up by the 100 million people in this mystic realm, right? Alright, it's just an idea. Seeing that everyone's faces were pale, Yun Nuoxing waved his hand jokingly. Then, he looked at Yao Hua and the rest. If you have time, help me take a look and see if there's anything special about this mystic realm. Hearing that they were suddenly involved, Yao Hua was stunned and scratched his head. You don't need us to follow you? Go and have fun by yourself. Yun Nuoxing rolled her eyes at him. I'm doing a secret mission. It'll be too noisy if I bring my family along. Help me keep an eye on the location of these energy nodes. Well, if it's obvious, just look for it. If it's not obvious, just look for it. If it's not obvious, don't look for it. Yao Hua smacked his lips. Just as he was about to say something, Jining raised her leg and kicked him aside. The latter stood in front of Yun Nuoxing with a smile and nodded seriously. Alright. Anything else? Also be careful. If you guys get hurt, I won't be able to explain myself when I get back. Yun Nuoxing spread her hands. The people of the 9 gods' temple sighed. Some covered their faces, while others looked up at the sky. They said in unison, No, if you get hurt and we're not there, it'll be even harder for us to explain. Anyway, just be careful. That second phase or something, at least pay attention to it. I don't know what it is either. Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly. Everyone nodded. Yao Hua elbowed Lin Xing and said with a smile, Hey, do you mind if we go to your place to have fun? Lin Xing was stunned. He scratched his cheek and nodded. I don't mind. Oh, let's go then. Seeing that Lin Xing did not object, Yao Hua exclaimed softly. Then, light elements surged out and wrapped around the group of people. In an instant they disappeared, leaving behind a large pile of light particles. Yun Nuoxing and the others were speechless. They seemed to have heard a scream, right? After he finished instructing them, Ziyen dismissed the burly man and the others and told them to gather together when necessary. So, only a few members of their original group were left here. Brother, where are we going now? Where are we going to have fun? Little Purple Soul jumped out from Ming's back and landed in Yun Nuoxing's arms. She looked up at him with a smile. Yun Nuoxing was stunned. He had forgotten about this girl. He did not see her in the spirit world just now and had forgotten about her for a moment. Ming saw Yun Nuoxing's stunned expression and his face twitched. She's been hanging on my wing. Yun Nuoxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He turned back to look at Ming, Yuan Shi, Nightmare, Qin Yen, Chu Yingzhan, Little Moon, Yur and Xian beside him. Then, he lowered his head and looked at Little Purple Soul, who was twisting her little body around. He smiled and put his hands under Little Purple Soul's arms, lifting her up high. The little girl giggled happily. A group of 10, huh? Unknowingly. Then, let's begin our puzzle solving. Let's go on a vacation. Little Purple Soul raised her little arms excitedly. Yun Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. Ahem, let's go on a vacation then. Everyone, can't you have some integrity? Chapter 907. In the dense forest, groups of people wearing the same clothes gathered here. On their shoulders, there was a big word God embroidered on their white clothes. These people had a very strong smell of blood, as if they had been soaking in a blood pool for several days. Even if there was no blood on their bodies, they were like walking pools of blood. The smell of blood was very strong. These people searched around the forest and gathered silently. Dozens of people looked at each other and shook their heads. The person who seemed to be the leader frowned and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and the group of people rushed out of the forest without making any sound. Half an hour after this group of people disappeared, in the forest, in the trunk of a towering tree, the dense branches and leaves wrapped themselves into a ball. However, the central position was somewhat sparse, and it was a relatively wide space. At this moment, the space in this place slowly fluctuated, and a thin layer of space barrier dissipated. The few people who were hiding inside carefully poked their heads out. Bah! Chu Yingzhan, dressed in men's clothes, spat out the branch in her mouth. She looked in the direction where the group left and frowned. She cursed, "It's been half a month. How can those idiots from the Celestial Godly Academy be so persistent? The key to the Void Fortress in the Void Domain is with me. Right now there are quite a few people in the Jiesu Mystery Realm looking for us. That little mystery realm seems to have been mentioned in many places in the Jiesu Mystery Realm, which is why so many people know about it." Yun Nuoxing came out of the spatial barrier and waved his hand to remove it. The figures of the group of people were completely revealed. "They have too many demigods. Let's avoid them for now." Yuan Shi sighed and poked her head out to take a look. She used the wind element to sense the movements within 100 miles. A moment later, she retracted her head and nodded to everyone. "It's safe. We've left. We have to recover our demigods as soon as possible. We're too passive. TCH, they only stayed for a month and a half more than us. How arrogant." Nightmare smacked her lips and sneered. She looked at Yun Nuoxing and asked, "Boss, how much have your artifacts recovered?" 30 of them are overloaded and can't be used for now. 20 of the rest can be used. Their energy cores have just recovered," Yun Nuoxing said. "It's inconvenient to rely on artifact. Young Master Yun is only a strategic weapon," Qin Yen said softly. Yun Nuoxing spread out his hands helplessly. There was nothing he could do. When the laws of heaven and earth were being disturbed by the seal of the mausoleum world, it was already considered a good power to be able to draw out a divine artifact and use it. As for his own power, it was completely suppressed. The energy nodes of fire, wood, metal, water, spirit, and soul have all been reversed. There are only 12 left. Yun Nuoxing looked at the map in her mind and wrinkled her nose. We are now in the Earth element zone. There are 10 energy nodes in this zone. Excluding the one that was just completed and the ones that were fixed earlier, there are still 4 left. During this period of time, they had been wandering around several areas of the Jiesu secret realm, but they weren't looking for treasures, nor were they looking for sacred objects. They were just reversing the energy nodes of the energy veins, hidden in the sky one by one. At this time, more than half of the huge energy veins were still in a normal state. The flow of energy was very slow, but the other part that had been activated, or rather reversed, was flowing at a very fast speed. At this time, the power of heaven and earth in these spaces was much denser than in other areas. However, they weren't the only group in the secret realm. They would often meet others while flying in the sky. Many people in the secret realm were in a killing frenzy. As long as they didn't meet their own people, they would fight. For this reason, Yun Nuoxing's group had lost count of how many times they fought. At first, they could rely on Yun Nuoxing's divine artifacts to avoid or end the fights quickly. Later on, as the number of divine artifacts decreased, Xian and Yuan Shi's group found a chance to act. Apart from Xian, the others had 1.5 months less time to recover their demon rank. They also had fewer people. After fighting for a long time, they ran out of energy and went into hiding. Moreover, Celestial Godly Academy seemed to know that Yun Nuoxing's group had returned and sent people to look for them. I formed Blood Feather to fight against Celestial Godly Academy. Most of the people in there were oppressed by Celestial Godly Academy or other factions that entered the secret realm. Ziyen looked at Yun Nuoxing and said, "Celestial Godly Academy seems to want revenge. I heard the principal of Far Light Academy tricked the principal of Celestial Godly Academy out of a level 8 divine rank weapon. But that's a high-level divine artifact." Yuan Shi's eyes widened. Everyone understood. No wonder there was so much killing intent. Why is this place so attractive? Nightmare scratched his head in confusion. How come I didn't know about this? My family didn't tell me this place was worth a trip either. Those guys smell blood and act like wolves. Everyone rolled their eyes to show that they had nothing to say about the Nightwalker alliance that he had secretly criticized. However, the first sentence made them a little concerned. That's right, what was in this secret territory that was worth a strong god using a high-level artifact as a bargaining chip? And this bargaining chip seemed to have been used to poach Yun Noa Star, right? Poaching Little Star and having him work for Celestial Godly Academy. Probably because he felt that with Little Star around, everything would be safe. Yuan-Shi scratched his head. Before coming in, I thought I was safe too. Yun Nuoxing shrugged. Who knew things would turn out like this? Then what does the principal know? What does he want Celestial Godly Academy to do? Also, those who come out of the Jiesu secret realm will lose their memories. How did he know? I have some guesses about this. Yun Nuoxing pondered for a bit. Seeing everyone look over, she organized her thoughts and condensed them into 3 words: Little Divine Land. Everyone understood. The reward for every trip to the secret realm was a spot to enter Little Divine Land. Little Divine Land was completely blocked by a layer of dark elemental barrier. There were only 2 ways to enter. One was to use dark elemental energy to open it. The other was to use the full power of a divine emperor to open a path. I've never heard of a sacred item. Yun Nuoxing shook her head. Oh right, Little Star, you came in through the back door. You didn't see him that day. Yuan-Shi paused for a moment before scratching her head. When the journey to the secret realm began, we were all gathered at a plaza, and the destination of the secret realm was determined by that door. Once it was determined, everyone in the plaza would be teleported in at once. Yun Nuoxing waved her hand to interrupt him. What is that door? I don't know, it's just a door. Yuan-Shi shook her head in distress. She gestured with her hands and a door that was about 2 feet tall and half a foot wide appeared in front of her. It's about this small. I can only tell that it looks like a door. I don't know anything else. Yun Nuoxing's face twitched when he heard that. Black? Golden frame? There's a fan on the door that's wider than the door? There's a red gem in the middle of the fan? Yuan-Shi was stunned and nodded her head in a daze. Seeing her nod her head, everyone felt that something was wrong. They looked at Yun Nuoxing strangely, only to see him smile bitterly. What is it? Does that thing have something to do with you? Chu Yingzhan asked carefully. Yun Nuoxing nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The shadow door, that was after Quarter Moon became a god. After the Dark Elemental Emperor self-destructed, Quarter Moon used the element of chaos to suppress the spread of the Dark Elemental element. Unable to destroy it, she could only shrink it into a corner and completely seal off the area of Little Divine Land. Whether it was inside or outside, nothing was left. After Quarter Moon became a god, she stepped down from the throne of the enemy of the world. Of course, I don't think anyone would dare to mess with her. After that, Quarter Moon created this shadow door. It was made from the Dark Elemental element and the Chaos Elemental element. There was no other material in it, just the crystallization of the 2 elements. The Dark Elemental energy had spread throughout the celestial realm. He tried his best to get rid of it, but he couldn't get rid of it completely. It took too long, and by the time he became a god, it was already too late. The Dark Elemental energy had seeped into the celestial realm, and the Shadow Gate was able to absorb all of it. Whatever that could be removed had been removed, but the celestial realm was still hidden beneath the earth, and even in these secret realms, the Great Reincarnation couldn't get rid of all of it. The celestial realm was protected by the Pillar of Creation and a layer of barrier. The creatures on it might have died in the Great Reincarnation, but the celestial realm itself wouldn't suffer much damage. Later on, Quarter Moon handed the Shadow Gate to someone. I don't remember, I don't have this part of memory. Anyway, it was that person who took the Shadow Gate to clean up the remaining dark elemental energy in the secret realms of the celestial realm. The dark elemental energy was entrenched under the celestial realm, and it was constantly growing. However, the surface of the earth had been cleaned up by quarter moon, so it wouldn't grow anymore. The energy that was growing every moment flowed in a balanced manner to all the secret realms of the celestial realm, and even in some unknown small spaces. The Shadow Gate could stimulate the dark elemental energy left in the secret realms, and make it appear in a physical form. If you collect these physical forms, you can use them as a one-time key to the small divine prefecture. Well, it's the same as a reward. After all, that place is so big, and it still retains the laws of the ancient era. Many people want to go in, but they can't. After Yun Nuoshing finished speaking, he sighed. All in all, you created that door to clean up the mess from back then. That door can awaken the dark elemental energy in the secret realms, and make it appear in a physical form. That door is the holy relic, and because the holy relic contains the dark elemental energy, it can open the barrier outside the small divine prefecture. Yuan Shi thought for a moment, and when he felt that he had not missed anything, he looked at Nightmare and asked, "Is that right?" "Well, that's right." Yun Nuoshing nodded with a smile. "So we're the ones responsible for collecting the keys." Nightmare sighed. "Yes, the journey to the secret realms seems to have started after Quarter Moon handed the Shadow Sect over to someone else. As for whether it was called the journey to the secret realms before, I don't know," Yun Nuoshing said with a smile. "However, the holy relic is related to the secret realms. It's only related to the dark elemental energy that it contains. We have to be clear about this. The holy relic was born in the Jiesu realm, and the dark elemental energy just happened to be attached to it. After all, the holy relic isn't a lump of black. The dark elemental energy that appears in a physical form is the condensation of all the remaining dark elemental energy in the secret realms, and not something else. Therefore, the holy relic should be related to the Jiesu realm in some way." Everyone laughed bitterly. It turned out that the journey to the secret realms was related to him. Perhaps the opening of each secret realm was related to the amount of dark elemental energy that was accumulated. Speaking of which, little star. Oh, Quarter Moon suffered so much in the realm of the gods. In the end, she still had the mind to get rid of the evil in the realm of the gods. If it were me, I would have left them to fend for themselves. Yuan Shi sighed. The realm of the gods is harmless. It's just that the maggots that are attached to it are a little disgusting, isn't it? Yun Nuoshing turned around and smiled, revealing a row of white teeth. Everyone shuddered at the smile. He had never treated the people of the realm of the gods as living creatures. Sensing the sudden change in the atmosphere, Yun Nuoshing coughed dryly and waved his hand. "So, the way to obtain the holy relic. Perhaps we have to understand what this Jiesu realm is all about. This world that came back from the ashes is really interesting. Let's go to the next place. We have to be careful this time. If we meet someone again, we won't be able to escape. The rest of the celestial artifacts are for fighting." Everyone quickly regained their senses and nodded. Casting aside those complicated thoughts, Ming stepped forward and carried Yun Nuoshing. The group quickly rushed out of the big tree. They did not encounter any danger along the way. At this time, most of the people in the Jiesu secret realm were gathered in the center of each area, fearlessly fighting for the sacred relics that they might never be able to touch. They fought with everything that looked like humans around them. Those who entered by mistake would immediately be attacked by tons of energy, and then the battle circle would expand. No one would die here, and the energy between heaven and earth was always abundant. The energy between heaven and earth was very abundant, and it was inexhaustible. It would not be a problem to fight until the end of time, as long as one did not die of exhaustion halfway through. Some people had even fought here for half a month because of this. The energy suppression in the dimensional pocket secret realm had already recovered to a relatively high level. Now, most of the powerhouses that could be seen were at the 6th or 7th seal of the demon rank. The stronger ones were at the demigod rank. Therefore, the commotion caused by the battle for the holy artifact was much grander than when a group of mortal rank powerhouses were fooling around. The energy fluctuations could be felt from afar. Occasionally, there would be a wave of destructive energy coming from afar. It seemed that a demigod powerhouse had used his big move. Unfortunately, the destructive wave didn't last long before it was suppressed by the chaotic energy on the side. Yun Nuoshing and the others quickly passed by the edge of these areas. They didn't stop for long, and the group of people pushed their speed to the limit. There were 3 demigod rank experts in their group, and the rest were 8 or 9 demigod rank experts. Aside from a virtual realm expert who didn't seem to be a threat and a little girl who didn't seem to be a threat, this group of people was still very valiant, especially the 2 who didn't seem to be a threat. Big brother, over there, I found it. Little Purple Soul excitedly stretched out her little finger and rubbed it against Yun Nuoshing's chest. She was very happy. Her long purple hair swept across Yun Nuoshing's face in the wind. Without needing Yun Nuoshing to say anything, Ming hugged her and flapped his wings hard. They sped towards the place Little Purple Soul pointed at. Xian, Yuanxi, and the others quickly followed behind. Little Purple Soul's ability to find energy nodes was even better than Yun Nuoshing's. Yun Nuoshing used the Eye of the Ocean and some other special reasons to see and sense a blurry place. She could see it clearly after the energy of the energy node was reversed. Before that, she could not see it clearly. During this half a month, Little Purple Soul had been running around with Yun Nuoshing and the others. One day, the little girl finally understood something. She immediately pointed out an energy node that was very far away. Later on, she heard herself say that the sky was densely covered with red lines. Then, the group of people from Yun Nua planet were shocked. Ming seemed to be able to see some of it too, but it was more blurry than Yun Nuoshing's. She could only fly around with Yun Nuoshing in her arms, while Yun Nuoshing carried Little Purple Soul in her arms. Everyone was doubtful because they could not see anything. Even Xian, who had the 5 elements constitution, could not see anything. Yun Nuoshing could not explain it either. They quickly found the place that Little Purple Soul was pointing at. It was a ruin that looked like the ruins of a ruined city. It was located in an empty field, and there were traces left behind in the ruins. It seemed like the place had been turned upside down. However, Yun Nuoshing and the others were not looking for anything in the ruins. What they were looking for was hidden in the sky or under the ground. This energy node was located in the center of the ruins, and it was buried under the ground. However, this was not a problem, and there was no need to break open the ground. Yun Nuoshing directly took out the serrated greatsword and threw it away. The greatsword stabbed into the ground and buried itself in the ground. As a red light soared into the sky, a dazzling red energy net like fireworks exploded in the sky, and the greatsword emerged from the ground by itself. There are 3 more. Yeah, I found it. It's over there, in a straight line. As soon as Yun Nuoshing finished her sentence, Little Purple Soul pointed into the distance and said, "Line up in a row." Yun Nuoshing's expression was a little strange, but he did not say anything. He nodded to everyone, and Ming Ming carried him and soared into the sky. The group of people once again flew rapidly into the distance. They were aggressive and did not have the slightest intention of hiding their whereabouts. This caused many people to hurriedly keep their distance when they saw this. This aura was a little too frightening. With Little Purple Soul's help, they easily found the remaining 3 energy nodes. After reversing them, everyone's bodies suddenly trembled. The energy nodes in the Earth elemental region had all been reversed. At this time, all the energy was flowing in the opposite direction. The reversed region occupied almost half the size of the Jie-Su secret realm. A strange feeling suddenly arose. Not only them, but everyone in this secret realm also had the same feeling. They all raised their heads and saw a scarlet-red net suddenly appear in the sky. And on the side of the Jiesu secret realm's 5 elements region, including the soul and spirit regions, the sky was covered by a deep blue net. I can see it. Is this the energy network that you were talking about? The azure net covered the entire sky like a spider's web, and one could see surging energy flowing through it. If one carefully sensed it, they would find that the energy flowing through the net was the energy of heaven and earth that they were familiar with. It seems that something is changing. Yun Nuoshing looked up and smiled mysteriously. Chapter 908. The azure net replaced the sky and densely covered the entire sky. Faint energy light spots flowed in all directions along with the azure energy in the energy veins. This extremely abnormal situation caused countless people in the secret realm to raise their heads. Even those who were fighting for the sacred artifacts stopped and looked at the sky in shock. Voices of shock and doubt quickly spread. At the same time, there was also a sense of fear. Humans would always be afraid of the unknown, more or less. This was especially so in a situation where everyone was in a frenzy of killing. The sudden appearance of this situation would make people even more nervous. Those are the energy veins in this secret realm. Are they the tracks of energy flow? Yuanshi raised his head and asked in surprise. It's normal that you can feel it. Yun Nuoshing nodded and said, generally speaking, the energy veins will not be exposed. They are hidden in the deep space between heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, they can't be seen. What appeared here now is just an appearance. You can see it, but you can't touch it. Even if you fly to the sky and fly over there, you won't be able to touch it. Yuanshi laughed awkwardly. He did have the thought of flying over to take a look. Only in places like the secret realm and small worlds where the structure of laws and order is not very stable will the energy veins be exposed. Yun Nuoshing said, the various elements of a normal world are very stable, but you won't have the chance to see their energy veins. Is that the power of heaven and earth that we use for our daily cultivation? Yuanshi asked curiously. Yun Nuoshing shook her head. Not all of it. Let's put it this way. If the world is compared to a person, the energy veins are our meridians. It's similar to the blood vessels. There isn't much difference in the meaning. However, our power doesn't come from these two places. You can understand it this way. Everyone nodded. It was a simple and easy explanation. There was no need to go into the deeper parts. If they were confused by the explanation, they would probably faint and not be able to fly. Rumble, a low rumble of thunder suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. Yun Nuoshing and the others, who were looking up at the sky, looked around in the sky again. However, they didn't see a single dark cloud, let alone any lightning. It's the sound of space. Space is vibrating. Yun Nuoshing muttered to herself and lowered her head. The space in front of her began to vibrate faintly. The space in the distance also began to distort. In the distant sky, a huge light curtain suddenly moved horizontally from the edge of the sky. The light curtain was so huge that it occupied all the space. It was approaching from the other side of the sky, but the situation behind it couldn't be seen at all. The huge light curtain gave everyone a huge pressure. When the light curtain got closer, the space also began to distort violently. The rumbling thunder also rapidly approached from afar. Everyone subconsciously took a step back. Although they didn't know what it was, the pressure it gave off was too strong. It made them break out in cold sweat. Seeing everyone's nervous expressions, Yun Nuoshing finally said something that made everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Don't be nervous. This is the light curtain of space displacement. This space is switching to a deeper layer of space. There are many overlapping layers of space in the void realm. We accidentally touched it. Was it really by accident? Yun Nuoshing murmured. Her last sentence was a rhetorical question. She frowned slightly. When everyone heard this, they were stunned. However, the first part of the sentence made them feel a little relieved. They all stopped and watched as the layer of light curtain rapidly approached them. Then, it swept past them with a loud rumble. The sky and earth suddenly changed. In the sky, the veins of energy were still there. The sky was still divided according to the colors of various regions. However, the sky and earth had changed. On the original land, there were many unknown buildings. The deep scars on the ground were still there. The mountains in the distance had turned from yellow to green. The energy of the sky and earth was also rising rapidly. The continuous palaces suddenly appeared in the plains, mountains, and other places. Vast and mighty energy splashed within the palaces, creating layers of energy reverberations. This caused the nerves of countless people who saw this to tighten. Many thoughts swiftly rotated within their minds. Countless people looked at the palaces and remains that had suddenly appeared. Their eyes were filled with surprise. The powerful energy that flowed within the palaces also caused a fiery heat to surge within the eyes of many people. After the initial surprise, what followed was a wave of greed. Don't go. The energy circulating in there is the power of a high-level god. Seeing the slight change in everyone's eyes, Yun Nuoshing seemed to know what they were thinking. Yuan Shi and the others were stunned. They scratched their heads awkwardly. They really did want to go and take a look. Why is it a high-level god? Weren't the ones we saw before? Because the space has been swapped. This is a deeper space. What we saw before was the surface space of the Jiesu secret realm. Have you all forgotten? Yun Nuoshing sighed softly. She pointed at the extremely hideous scars on the ground in the distance and said, I said it once. The great battle that broke out here was destructive. It was a battle between high-level gods, or even gods. Those scars were left behind by powerful beings of this level. The masters of the ruins in the surface space were at most at the level of a demon. The two don't match at all. It's better to say that the palaces and ruins that appeared at this time are in line with my speculation. Everyone scratched their heads. She seemed to have said that before. You knew from the beginning that there was a deeper space here? Chu Yingzhan asked with a strange expression. Yun Nuoshing shook her head and said, At first, I just felt that something was wrong. The entire Jie-Su secret realm had a sense of disharmony. It was only when I came back and merged with part of my former self that I realized that there was something wrong with this space. There was a huge commotion in the distance. There was an explosion of energy from a high-level god. There were no high-level gods in the secret territory, so the explosion of energy could only have come from the ruins of these ancient palaces. The people in the Jie-Su secret territory started to riot again. Let's go. It's time to go to the next place. Yun Nuoshing waved her hand. Ming nodded and hugged his waist tightly. He flapped his wings and flew up. Everyone quickly followed behind him. Hey boss, the ruins of the high-level gods are here. Don't you want to take a look? There might be a lot of artifacts in there. Nightmare nudged Yun Nuoshing with his elbow and said. Yun Nuoshing turned her head and glanced at him indifferently. She shook her head helplessly and pointed at the star pearl on her forehead. She said, I dare say that even if all the ruins and small secret realms in this secret realm were to be tripled, they wouldn't be as much as what I have now. Nightmare instantly fell silent. Yun Nuoshing didn't stop talking. She pointed at her forehead and shook the 2 rings on her left hand. She said, There are restrictions in the things that Xian left for me. Let's not talk about what's behind. Just the things that I can touch now. TSK, there's also a divine palace. Now that the mausoleum world is also under my control, why should I go and join in the fun? If you're tempted, I can throw you into the divine palace and the mausoleum world for 3 days. You can even sleep with artifacts and treasures from ancient times. Such a bold statement made everyone laugh and cry. They almost forgot that the things that this guy had were things that even some of the transcendent forces couldn't compare with. Ahem, I want an eternal weapon. I wonder if this fairy Chu Yingzhan stared at Yun Nuoxing enviously. Her obsidian-like eyes were shining, and Yun Nuoxing had goosebumps. Well, I have a use for an eternal weapon. Yun Nuoxing coughed dryly and scratched her head with a dry smile. Tisk. Chu Yingzhan curled her lips. Yun Nuoxing forced a smile. He wanted to use the eternal weapon to cultivate the receptive soul godly body. Now, the receptive soul godly body was picky about its food. It wouldn't pay attention to anything that wasn't rich enough to scare people to death. Only eternal weapons, Divine Flame lists top 30, Devil Thunder lists top 15, and those that could be called divine items could make the receptive soul godly body continue to grow stronger. However, his realm wasn't high enough at the moment. If he absorbed too many spiritual items, he wouldn't be able to see the changes in the receptive soul godly body. His body was already close to saturation. If he wanted the receptive soul godly body to make a qualitative leap, he would have to break through the devil rank first. But this shackle was no longer a problem. The space that Yun Nuoxing opened up in her body had stored enough energy for her to advance to the demigod 9th transformation stage in one go. That was the energy that Quarter Moon left behind before she dissipated. Ahem, we'll talk about other things later. Little Purple, let's look at the next one. Before Yun Nuoxing could finish, Little Purple Soul raised her hand and said something that made Yun Nuoxing's eyes widen. Brother, the positions of those red balls have changed. Everyone, huh? And there are a lot more of them. Some of them are hiding. Yun Nuoxing was dumbfounded. What do you mean by hiding? They are hiding in some spaces. I can't see them clearly. I can only see their blurry tracks. Little Purple Soul mumbled and rubbed her eyes. She pointed in a direction, which was the next area that they were supposed to go to. There are a lot of them hiding there. And the place has changed. Don't tell me you're referring to the small secret realm? Yuan Shi had a strange look on his face. Well, we'll know when we get there. Yun Nuoxing's cheeks trembled. Even though she said that, she had already thought of the worst-case scenario. It's not difficult. The inner spaces have been released, and there are a lot of valuable ruins and palaces. Most of them are not easy to enter and will attract a lot of attention. At least, the people of Celestial Godly Academy won't have time to care about us, Ming said softly. Well, it's none of my business. Oh, I'll have to tell Yao Hua and Lin Xing not to barge in recklessly. They'll probably go and take a look after that. Yun Nuoxing's lips twitched when she said that. Even though she said that, she quickly found the soul seeds of those people in her soul and told them about the new things that had appeared. Then, there was an uproar in her soul. Haha, I can tell it's your doing even from millions of miles away. Amidst the noisy chatter, Yao Hua's helpless voice could be heard. Anyway, we'll be careful. We'll be very careful. When is the feast you've prepared going to start? Remember to let us know. Yun Nuoxing replied vaguely, and quickly blocked the words from her soul seeds. Only then did her mind clear up and she let out a sigh of relief. It's been bombarded. Looking at Yun Nuoxing's pale face, Yuan Shi nodded calmly. He tried it once, and there were dozens of voices in his head. They were all talking at once, and there was no consensus at all. He didn't know what to do and was almost flattened by the void beast. The brownish-yellow color in the sky gradually faded, which meant that they were gradually leaving the Earth elemental region. The region in front of them was a region above the soul region called Chaos. Just mentioning this name made everyone's heart skip a beat. After going to the 5 elements, everyone had an inexplicable fear of the words chaos and chaos. The group moved very quickly and soon reached the edge of the Earth elemental region. In the sky, what could be seen after passing through the thin layer of energy was the scene of 2 parts of the sky gradually merging and switching. The brownish-yellow sky and the starry sky looked very normal. They could even see specks of starlight, but there was nothing else. This normal scene stunned everyone who was used to the strange and gaudy scene. Everyone rushed into that region without any suspicion. Then, once again, they saw the world in front of them become chaotic and strange. The distorted starlight was stretched into long strips of starlight. A sun that was only the size of a little finger was hanging in the sky, but it was a ring. The black starry sky was incomparably deep. The tens of millions of starlight were stretched into strips and rings. It was as if something was interfering with the tens of thousands of starlight above their heads. Whoosh! Before anyone could react to the scene in front of them, the space in front of them suddenly changed again. The mountain range that originally stood in front of them disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a plain. However, when they looked up, they were still under the starry sky. The space has been shifted. We have arrived at the center of this region. Everyone stopped. Yuan-Shi looked around. He had seen many situations like this, so he could tell at this time. Little Purple Soul climbed onto Yun Nuoxing's shoulder and pointed behind them. Ah, there's one behind us. Brother, let's go to that one. It's closer. Okay. Yun Nuoxing replied weakly. Wait, the space in this place is chaotic. We don't know where we will be thrown if we just walk around. We have to think of a way. Yuan-Shi waved his hand. Hey, look at the sky. Don't you think it looks a little familiar? Nightmare had been looking up the whole time. Her words made everyone turn their heads and look up. Then, the chaotic starry sky in the sky fell into their eyes. The chaotic starry sky and the chaotic space. These two things suddenly tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Other than Xian, everyone thought of something and took a deep breath. They quickly turned their heads to look at Yun Nuoxing. Before they could say anything, the latter slowly raised her head. Her eyes suddenly turned red and black. The whites of her eyes were black, and her pupils were scarlet. Murky black energy surged out of Yun Nuoxing's body and spread in all directions at an extremely fast speed. However, the energy swept past everyone and quickly enveloped an area of 10 feet around them. Yun Nuoxing raised her head. Her eyes became incomparably dark. Her colorful long hair turned black at this time. The ink-like black flowed through her hair. Her palms that were exposed outside her clothes also had some black patterns on them. Ming, let her go. Yuan-Shi was shocked and quickly shouted. Ming, who was closest to Yun Nuoxing, had already felt this movement. At first, she was also shocked. When she heard Yuan-Shi's words, she shook her head and clenched her teeth. Instead, she hugged him even tighter. Girl, don't use so much strength. My waist is going to break. Yun Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Oh, the whites of her eyes were black. It should be said that she was rolling her eyes. Ming was stunned for a moment. She hesitated and said, Brother? Yes. I'm fine. This place. Yun Nuoxing responded weakly. She took a light breath and said, The elements of chaos are moving spontaneously. I'm fine. But we have to hurry. I can't stay in this state for too long. Then this place really has something to do with the elements of chaos? Yuan-Shi's cheeks trembled. I'm sure that the elements of chaos are moving spontaneously. This is the most obvious evidence. I seem to be able to use 100% of my strength here. Perhaps it's even more than that. Yun Nuoxing nodded. She gently broke free from Ming's embrace. Behind her, 2 black auras surged out like fountains. They turned into the shape of devil wings and solidified on her back. They were like black clouds that constantly drifted. The aura emitted from her body was violent and chaotic. It made everyone's souls feel alarmed. Domain of chaos. With a soft whisper, the black aura that spread out for 10 feet wrapped around everyone in a sphere. After that, the aura that made everyone feel uneasy disappeared. Although the black aura was still flowing on Yun Nuoxing's body, everyone did not feel that feeling anymore. She picked up Little Purple Soul, who was still hanging on her body. Yun Nuoxing smiled and rubbed her long purple hair. She then put her in Ming's arms. She looked up at everyone and said calmly, Don't touch me for now. The domain of chaos can nullify the chaos here. Don't reach out and touch me or the elements of chaos. You may suffer a backlash after thinking for a while, Yun Nuashing added, but the backlash won't be too serious. Back then, the Pope of Ivan was also saved. It was like digging out a piece of meat. After saying that, she made a gesture of digging out something and pulling it out. Everyone's hearts trembled. They did not want to experience this feeling again. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.